Before we begin, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. The literature of cosmic horror occupies a unique position within the broader landscape of weird fiction, offering readers not merely supernatural thrills, but a systematic deconstruction of humanity's perceived significance in an indifferent universe. H.P. Lovecraft's creation of the outer gods, entities like Azathoth, Nyarlathotep, and Yog-Sothoth, represents one of the most influential mythological frameworks in 20th century horror literature, establishing narrative conventions that continue to shape contemporary fiction nearly a century after their initial conception. This analysis examines the literary construction and cultural evolution of these cosmic entities, tracing their development from Lovecraft's isolated stories of the 1920s and 1930s through their expansion by collaborative writers and their eventual transformation into recognizable elements of popular culture. Rather than treating these entities as objects of supernatural belief, we approach them as sophisticated literary devices that reflect specific anxieties about scientific materialism, cosmic insignificance, and the limits of human knowledge. Our investigation proceeds through four interconnected frameworks: the historical and biographical contexts that shaped Lovecraft's creative vision, the literary techniques employed to construct believable cosmic mythology, the collaborative expansion of these concepts by subsequent authors, and the remarkable persistence of these ideas across multiple media platforms. Through this comprehensive examination, we seek to understand not only what the outer gods represent within their original literary contexts, but why these particular manifestations of cosmic dread continue to resonate with contemporary audiences facing their own encounters with an increasingly incomprehensible universe. Howard Phillips Lovecraft emerged from the genteel decay of early 20th century Providence, Rhode Island, as one of America's most influential yet initially unrecognized writers of weird fiction. Born in 1890 to a family whose fortunes had diminished from their colonial-era prominence, Lovecraft inhabited a world caught between Victorian propriety and modernist upheaval, between scientific rationalism and lingering supernatural anxieties. His childhood was marked by peculiar circumstances that would profoundly shape his literary imagination. His father's commitment to a psychiatric institution when Howard was 3, his subsequent rearing by an overprotective mother and 2 maiden aunts, and his precocious intellectual development coupled with social isolation. These formative experiences created a writer uniquely positioned to articulate the anxieties of an age discovering its cosmic insignificance. Consider carefully how Lovecraft's personal circumstances, financial insecurity, social awkwardness, and profound learning converge to produce not merely weird tales, but a systematic mythology of cosmic dread that would outlive its creator by nearly a century. The intellectual foundations of Lovecraft's cosmic horror emerged from his voracious consumption of scientific and philosophical literature during his formative years. Unlike his contemporaries who drew primarily from Gothic traditions or contemporary occultism, Lovecraft immersed himself in the works of materialist philosophers, astronomical texts, and anthropological studies that revealed the vast scales of space and time within which human existence appeared as merely a brief accident. His correspondence, numbering over 100,000 letters, reveals a mind grappling seriously with the implications of Darwinian evolution, Einstein's relativity, and emerging discoveries about the universe's true dimensions. It is not simply that Lovecraft read widely in science, rather, he internalized these discoveries as sources of existential terror rather than wonder or religious confirmation. This philosophical orientation distinguished him sharply from writers like Arthur Machen or Algernon Blackwood, who typically resolved their supernatural narratives through mystical or religious frameworks. Lovecraft's horror stemmed precisely from the absence of such comforting resolutions, from his conviction that the universe revealed by modern science was fundamentally indifferent to human values and aspirations. Lovecraft's literary career developed through 3 distinct phases, each contributing essential elements to what would eventually be recognized as a coherent mythological system. His early period, roughly from 1917 to 1925, saw him experimenting with Dunsanian fantasy and Poe-influenced Gothic tales that established his mastery of atmospheric technique while gradually introducing cosmic themes. Stories like Dagon and The Nameless City began to suggest vast temporal scales and alien civilizations that predated human history, though they retained conventional narrative structures and relatively comprehensible threats. The middle period, from 1926 to 1930, witnessed the emergence of his most systematic cosmic horror with tales like The Call of Cthulhu, The Color Out of Space, and The Dunwich Horror, which established the basic framework of an interconnected mythology featuring entities of cosmic scope and malevolent intelligence. His final period, from 1931 until his death in 1937, produced increasingly complex narratives that pushed the boundaries of human comprehension itself, culminating in works like At the Mountains of Madness and The Shadow Out of Time, that suggested the ultimate futility of human knowledge when confronted with cosmic reality. We must recognize that this progression was not accidental, but reflected Lovecraft's deepening commitment to a literature of cosmic pessimism that challenged fundamental assumptions about humanity's place in the universe. The creation of what, later, became known as the Cthulhu mythos was not originally conceived as a systematic project, but emerged organically from Lovecraft's attempt to create believable weird fiction that incorporated contemporary scientific understanding. Unlike traditional supernatural horror, which typically relied on violations of natural law, Lovecraft's cosmic horror suggested that natural law itself might be far stranger and more threatening than previously imagined. His fictional entities were not demons or ghosts in conventional senses, but alien intelligences operating according to incomprehensible principles that rendered human morality and reasoning inadequate. The recurring elements, forbidden books like the Necronomicon, ancient cities with non-Euclidean geometry, cosmic entities with unpronounceable names, were literary devices designed to suggest the existence of knowledge systems fundamentally alien to human understanding. This approach required unprecedented attention to internal consistency and pseudo-scholarly documentation, as Lovecraft constructed elaborate fictional histories and genealogies that lent verisimilitude to impossible concepts. The effectiveness of this method can be measured by the persistent belief among some readers that the Necronomicon and similar texts actually existed, despite Lovecraft's own repeated clarifications that they were entirely fictional constructions. Lovecraft's personal struggles with poverty, social isolation, and declining health profoundly influenced both the themes and the urgency of his literary work during his final decade. His marriage to Sonia Green in 1924 and subsequent residence in New York City had exposed him to urban anxieties and cultural diversity that intensified his already pronounced xenophobic tendencies, while financial pressures forced him to confront the gap between his aristocratic pretensions and his actual economic circumstances. These experiences deepened the pessimistic philosophy that had always characterized his work, leading to increasingly bleak narratives that offered no possibility of heroic resistance or meaningful victory against cosmic forces. His correspondence from this period reveals a writer acutely conscious of his own mortality and obscurity, yet paradoxically driven to create works of increasing ambition and complexity. The cosmic entities of his mature fiction can be understood, in part, as projections of his own sense of powerlessness and insignificance, transformed through literary craft into universal symbols of existential dread. This personal dimension adds psychological depth to what might otherwise appear as purely intellectual exercises in materialist philosophy. The circumstances of Lovecraft's death in 1937, from intestinal cancer and poverty and relative obscurity, seem to confirm the cosmic indifference that his fiction had consistently portrayed. Yet, the posthumous trajectory of his reputation suggests something more complex than simple neglect followed. By belated recognition, August Derleth's efforts to preserve and systematize Lovecraft's work, while often criticized for imposing Christian moral frameworks onto fundamentally amoral cosmologies, ensured the survival of texts that might otherwise have vanished into pulp magazine obscurity. The gradual recognition of Lovecraft's literary significance, from cult following to academic respectability, reflects broader cultural shifts toward accepting pessimistic and anti-humanistic perspectives that were largely unpalatable to his contemporaries. This posthumous vindication establishes the foundation for understanding how Lovecraft's personal vision of cosmic horror evolved into a collaborative mythology that continues to influence contemporary literature, establishing the groundwork for examining how his initial creative frameworks developed into the systematic mythological structures that define modern cosmic horror. The transformation of Lovecraft's isolated weird tales into a coherent mythological system represents one of the most fascinating examples of posthumous literary evolution in 20th century fiction. During his lifetime, Lovecraft never conceived of his various cosmic entities and forbidden texts as comprising a unified mythos, a term that would only emerge through the systematizing efforts of his literary executors and admirers. Instead, his approach was fundamentally pragmatic. He created whatever fictional elements, ancient cities, blasphemous tomes, alien deities, served the atmospheric and philosophical purposes of individual stories, occasionally cross-referencing these inventions to enhance verisimilitude. The Necronomicon, for instance, appeared in The Hound, 1924, as a minor atmospheric detail, evolved into a central plot device in The Call of Cthulhu, 1928, and eventually became the foundational text of an entire fictional scholarship. This organic development reflects Lovecraft's working method, which prioritized immediate narrative effectiveness over systematic world-building, yet inadvertently created the raw materials for a comprehensive cosmological framework. We must recognize that the Cthulhu mythos, as it came to be known, represents both Lovecraft's original vision and a collaborative interpretation that extended far beyond his individual intentions. The earliest phase of mythos development occurred through Lovecraft's correspondence with fellow writers, particularly Clark Ashton Smith, Robert E. Howard, and Frank Belknap Long, who began incorporating each other's fictional creations into their own stories during the late 1920s and early 1930s. This informal collaboration established precedents for shared world building that would prove crucial to the mythos's later expansion, as writers discovered that Lovecraft's cosmic entities possessed sufficient ambiguity and scope to support multiple interpretations and elaborations. Howard's inclusion of references to the Necronomicon and Cthulhu in his own weird tales, while Smith contributed the Book of Eibon and various cosmic deities that Lovecraft subsequently adopted, demonstrated the collaborative potential inherent in cosmic horror's fundamental premise of vast, interconnected mysteries. These cross-references created an impression of scholarly authenticity, as if multiple independent sources were documenting the same terrible realities, while simultaneously expanding the mythos beyond any single author's imagination. The collaborative spirit of this period reflected both practical considerations, writers sharing resources and inspiration, and deeper philosophical alignments about the nature of cosmic horror itself. This early collaborative phase established the mythos as fundamentally expansive rather than closed, open to interpretation and elaboration rather than fixed in definitive form. August Derleth's role in preserving, organizing, and expanding Lovecraft's literary legacy cannot be overstated, though his contributions remain among the most controversial aspects of mythos development. Following Lovecraft's death in 1937, Derleth assumed responsibility for collecting and publishing his mentor's scattered works, founding Arkham House specifically to ensure their preservation and wider distribution. However, Derleth's systematizing efforts went far beyond mere preservation, as he imposed organizational structures and thematic interpretations that significantly altered the character of Lovecraft's original vision. Most notably, Derleth's division of cosmic entities into opposing forces of good and evil, the Elder Gods versus the Great Old Ones, introduced Christian moral frameworks that directly contradicted Lovecraft's fundamental commitment to cosmic amorality. Where Lovecraft had presented entities like Cthulhu and Azathoth as simply alien rather than actively malevolent, Derleth's systematization cast them as cosmic villains opposed by benevolent counterparts, transforming cosmic horror into a more conventional battle between supernatural forces. This theological overlay, while making the mythos more accessible to popular audiences, represented a fundamental misunderstanding of Lovecraft's materialist philosophy. Yet, Derleth's organizational efforts, however philosophically problematic, provided the structural foundation that enabled the mythos to survive and flourish throughout the mid-20th century. The mythos underwent significant expansion during the 1960s and 1970s through the contributions of writers like Ramsey Campbell, Brian Lumley, and Colin Wilson, who approached Lovecraft's creations with greater sensitivity to their original philosophical implications, while adapting them to contemporary concerns. Campbell's early mythos stories, collected in The Inhabitant of the Lake and Less Welcome Tenants, demonstrated how cosmic horror could be transplanted from Lovecraft's New England settings to entirely different geographical and cultural contexts. In Campbell's case, the industrial landscapes of northern England. This geographical expansion proved crucial to the mythos's international development, as it demonstrated that cosmic horror's fundamental themes transcended specific regional or cultural boundaries. Lumley's Titus Crow series, while criticized for introducing heroic protagonists capable of meaningful resistance against cosmic forces, explored the implications of humans gaining access to cosmic knowledge and power, pushing the mythos towards science fiction rather than pure horror. Wilson's philosophical approach, particularly in The Mind Parasites and The Space Vampires, attempted to reconcile Lovecraftian themes with contemporary psychological and paranormal theories, creating hybrid narratives that maintain cosmic scope while offering more optimistic possibilities for human evolution. These diverse approaches revealed the mythos's remarkable adaptability, its capacity to support radically different interpretive frameworks while maintaining its essential character as literature of cosmic dread. The academic recognition of Lovecraft's literary significance during the 1970s and 1980s coincided with increasingly sophisticated approaches to mythos development, as writers like T.E.D. Klein, Thomas Ligotti, and Caitlin R. Kiernan brought scholarly awareness and literary sophistication to cosmic horror themes. Klein's The Ceremonies demonstrated how mythos elements could be integrated into psychologically complex narratives that maintained Lovecraft's philosophical pessimism while achieving greater characterization and emotional depth. Ligotti's contributions, particularly in collections like Songs of a Dead Dreamer, pushed cosmic horror toward even bleaker territories, exploring themes of cosmic puppetry and existential meaninglessness that made Lovecraft's vision seem almost optimistic by comparison. Kiernan's paleontological background enabled her to ground cosmic horror in genuine scientific speculation, creating narratives that achieved Lovecraft's goal of scientifically plausible weird fiction more successfully than many of his own stories. This period saw the emergence of what might be called literary cosmic horror, as distinguished from the pulp adventure narratives that had dominated earlier mythos expansions. These writers demonstrated that cosmic horror could support serious literary ambitions while maintaining its essential character as a literature of existential dread and cosmic insignificance. The digital age has witnessed an unprecedented explosion of mythos-related creativity, as online communities, gaming platforms, and multimedia adaptations have introduced Lovecraftian themes to audiences far beyond traditional literary readership. The development of the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game in 1981 proved particularly significant, as it provided systematic rules for exploring cosmic horror themes interactively while establishing canonical interpretations of mythos, elements that influenced subsequent literary development. Video games like Call of Cthulhu, Dark Corners of the Earth, and The Sinking City have created immersive environments for experiencing cosmic horror, while online fiction platforms have enabled thousands of amateur and professional writers to contribute their own mythos interpretations. This democratization of mythos creation has produced works of wildly varying quality and philosophical sophistication. Yet the sheer volume of production has ensured the mythos's continued evolution and relevance. Contemporary writers like Laird Barron, Philip Fracassi, and Matthew M. Bartlett have emerged from this digital ecosystem to produce professionally published works that maintain high literary standards while exploring new possibilities within cosmic horror frameworks. The mythos has thus evolved from Lovecraft's individual vision through collaborative expansion, systematic organization, literary sophistication, and finally to its current status as a shared cultural mythology accessible to creators and audiences across multiple media platforms, establishing the foundation for examining the specific literary techniques that enable such remarkable creative proliferation and cultural persistence. Lovecraft's revolutionary approach to constructing believable weird fiction rested upon his systematic deployment of pseudo-scholarly documentation, a technique that transformed supernatural horror from folklore-based fantasy into something resembling academic investigation of impossible phenomena. Unlike Gothic predecessors who relied upon atmospheric suggestion and traditional supernatural elements, Lovecraft embedded his cosmic horrors within elaborate frameworks of fictional scholarship, complete with cross-reference texts, scholarly citations, and detailed chronologies that created an impression of rigorous documentation. The Necronomicon serves as the most famous example of this technique, presented not merely as a magical grimoire, but as a historical document with specific authorship, publication history, and scholarly commentary spanning centuries. Lovecraft provided detailed bibliographic information about this non-existent text. Composed by the mad Arab Abdul al-Hazred around 730 CE, translated into Greek as Necronomicon by Theodorus Philetas in 950 CE, rendered into Latin by Olaus Wormius in 1268, and surviving in carefully catalogued copies housed at Harvard's Widener Library, the Bibliothèque Nationale, and Miskatonic University's special collections. This level of scholarly detail served multiple narrative functions simultaneously. It enhanced verisimilitude by suggesting the existence of verifiable sources, created an impression of vast historical depth underlying contemporary horrors, and established a pseudo-academic tone that made fantastic elements appear more credible. We must recognize that this technique represented a fundamental innovation in weird fiction, one that influenced not only subsequent cosmic horror, but the broader development of modern fantasy literature's approach to world-building authenticity. The construction of Miskatonic University as a recurring institutional setting demonstrates Lovecraft's sophisticated understanding of how academic environments could serve cosmic horror's narrative requirements, while providing realistic contexts for encounters with forbidden knowledge. Established as a fictional institution in Arkham, Massachusetts, Miskatonic University possessed all the characteristics of a legitimate New England academic institution. Founded in 1690, housed in ivy-covered Georgian buildings, and maintaining departments of archaeology, anthropology, and medieval studies that would logically possess collections of rare and dangerous texts. The university's library, with its restricted sections and occult manuscripts, provided plausible explanations for how contemporary characters might encounter ancient cosmic secrets, while its faculty offered credible expertise in translating and interpreting these materials. Professor Armitage, the head librarian who appears in multiple stories, exemplifies Lovecraft's technique of creating recurring academic characters whose scholarly credentials lend authority to their investigations of supernatural phenomena. The university setting also enabled Lovecraft to explore themes of institutional complicity and academic hubris, as scholarly curiosity repeatedly leads researchers into realms of knowledge too dangerous for human comprehension. This institutional framework proved so effective that subsequent mythos writers continued to employ academic settings, understanding that universities provide ideal environments for combining intellectual credibility with access to forbidden information. The technique demonstrates how Lovecraft transformed the traditional Gothic castle or haunted house into modern institutional spaces that reflected contemporary anxieties about scientific overreach and academic responsibility. Lovecraft's deployment of unreliable narrators represents perhaps his most psychologically sophisticated technique for managing the fundamental challenge of cosmic horror: how to describe the indescribable without diminishing its mystery through excessive detail. His protagonists typically function as academic investigators, antiquarians, archaeologists, anthropologists, whose scholarly training provides them with analytical frameworks for approaching cosmic mysteries, yet whose human limitations prevent them from achieving complete understanding of what they encounter. The narrator of The Call of Cthulhu exemplifies this technique. presenting himself as a methodical investigator who pieces together fragments of evidence from his deceased uncle's papers, yet ultimately acknowledging that the most merciful thing in the world is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. This narrative strategy enables Lovecraft to provide sufficient detail to create vivid atmospheric effects while maintaining the essential mystery that cosmic horror requires. The narrator's frequent acknowledgments of their own limitations, their inability to describe certain geometries, their failure to comprehend alien languages, their breakdown when confronted with cosmic realities, serve both as realistic psychological responses and as literary devices that preserve the unknowable nature of cosmic entities. These characters often experience various forms of mental deterioration as they approach cosmic truths, from simple confusion through selective amnesia to complete psychological collapse, suggesting that human consciousness itself constitutes a barrier to cosmic understanding. This technique proved remarkably influential, establishing patterns of unreliable narration that continue to characterize contemporary cosmic horror literature. The linguistic strategies employed throughout Lovecraft's fiction reveal his sophisticated understanding of how language itself could become a tool for suggesting cosmic alienness and human inadequacy in the face of universal mysteries. His famous deployment of adjectives like cyclopean, non-Euclidean, blasphemous, and unspeakable functioned not merely as atmospheric decoration, but as systematic attempts to convey experiences that exceeded normal descriptive capacity. The recurring emphasis on unspeakable and indescribable phenomena serves the dual function of acknowledging linguistic limitations, while paradoxically enhancing the reader's imagination of what cannot be directly conveyed. Lovecraft's creation of alien languages and incomprehensible names, Cthulhu, Nyarlathotep, Yog-Sothoth, employed harsh consonant clusters and unusual vowel combinations that suggested non-human vocal apparatus while remaining memorable enough to achieve iconic status. His frequent use of negative constructions, not dead, not entirely human, not wholly terrestrial, created impressions of cosmic entities that existed in states beyond normal categories of existence, neither alive nor dead, neither material nor immaterial, but occupying impossible positions that challenged fundamental conceptual distinctions. The technique of providing translation approximations for alien concepts, suggesting that human languages could only approximate cosmic realities, further emphasized the inadequacy of terrestrial understanding when confronted with universal truths. These linguistic strategies created a distinctive prose style that became immediately recognizable as Lovecraftian, establishing patterns that subsequent cosmic horror writers would both emulate and react against in developing their own approaches to expressing the inexpressible. Lovecraft's architectural descriptions serve as crucial components of his world-building technique, employing spatial impossibilities and geometric anomalies to suggest the breakdown of normal reality when cosmic forces intrude. Beyond terrestrial environments, his frequent references to non-Euclidean geometry and wrong angles in describing alien structures were not merely atmospheric flourishes, but systematic attempts to convey how cosmic realities might appear to consciousness evolved within three-dimensional terrestrial space. The sunken city of R'lyeh, with its massive stone blocks and geometries that hurt to look upon, exemplifies this technique by presenting architecture that follows alien principles of construction that human perception cannot properly process. These descriptions suggest that cosmic entities operate according to spatial principles that transcend normal dimensional limitations, creating structures that exist partially outside conventional spacetime while remaining accessible to human investigation. The recurring motif of ancient cities and archaeological discoveries provides realistic contexts for encounters with impossible architecture, while the academic backgrounds of investigating characters offer plausible explanations for their ability to recognize and document geometric anomalies. Lovecraft's architectural descriptions often emphasize scale relationships that dwarf human proportions, suggesting civilizations whose physical requirements exceeded terrestrial possibilities, while the durability of these structures across geological time periods implies technologies far beyond human achievement. This architectural technique proved particularly influential in visual adaptations of cosmic horror, as artists and filmmakers have consistently drawn upon Lovecraft's spatial descriptions in creating memorable images of cosmic alienness that maintain the essential quality of existing beyond normal comprehension. The systematic interconnection of Lovecraft's fictional elements through cross-references, shared locations, and recurring characters created an impression of comprehensive world-building that extended far beyond individual narrative requirements, establishing a technique that would profoundly influence subsequent fantasy and horror literature. Unlike traditional weird tales that typically remain self-contained, Lovecraft's mature stories consistently referenced events, characters, and discoveries from other narratives, creating an impression of ongoing investigation into interconnected cosmic mysteries. The recurring appearance of towns like Arkham, Dunwich, and Kingsport provided geographical consistency that enhanced verisimilitude, while characters like Professor Armitage and Dr. Wilmarth served as reliable witnesses whose credibility carried over between different stories. The technique of having characters discover previous investigators' records, notebooks, correspondence, newspaper clippings, created layered narratives that suggested vast historical contexts extending both backward and forward from immediate story events. This interconnectedness served both practical and philosophical functions. Practically, it reduced the need to establish credibility for supernatural elements in each new story, while philosophically, it reinforced cosmic horror's central theme that individual human experiences constitute mere fragments of much larger and more terrifying universal patterns. The success of this technique can be measured by its adoption throughout subsequent fantasy literature, from Tolkien's Middle-earth through contemporary shared world projects. Though few authors have matched Lovecraft's ability to maintain internal consistency while preserving essential mysteries, establishing the foundation for examining how these technical innovations supported the philosophical frameworks that gave cosmic horror its distinctive character and enduring cultural influence. The philosophical underpinnings of Lovecraft's cosmic horror emerge from his profound engagement with materialist philosophy and contemporary scientific discoveries that systematically undermine traditional humanistic assumptions about humanity's significance within the broader cosmos. Unlike supernatural horror traditions that typically resolve their mysteries through religious or metaphysical frameworks, Lovecraft's cosmic horror drew its existential terror from rigorous acceptance of scientific materialism's implications for human existence and meaning. His correspondence reveals extensive reading in the works of philosophers like Ernst Haeckel, whose The Riddle of the Universe articulated a thoroughgoing materialism that reduced human consciousness to mere epiphenomena of chemical processes, and Friedrich Nietzsche, whose proclamation of God's death resonated with Lovecraft's own atheistic convictions. These intellectual influences converge with emerging astronomical discoveries about the universe's vast scale and age. Evolutionary biology's revelation of humanity's recent emergence from animal origins, and anthropological studies that demonstrated the cultural relativity of human values and beliefs. The result was a philosophical framework that treated human civilization not as the culmination of cosmic development, but as a temporary accident in an indifferent universe governed by laws that bore no relationship to human needs or aspirations. This materialist foundation distinguished Lovecraft's work sharply from contemporaries like Arthur Machen or Algernon Blackwood, who typically employed supernatural elements to suggest transcendent realities beyond material existence. For Lovecraft, the horror lay precisely in the absence of transcendence, in the recognition that material reality itself, when fully understood, revealed truths too terrible for human consciousness to bear. The concept of cosmic insignificance functions as the central organizing principle of Lovecraft's philosophical approach, transforming traditional horror's emphasis on immediate physical or spiritual threats into a more fundamental challenge to human self-understanding and cosmic relevance. This theme emerged most clearly in stories like The Call of Cthulhu, where the narrator's investigation reveals that human civilization exists in complete ignorance of vast alien intelligences, whose casual awakening would obliterate terrestrial life, not through malevolent intention, but through simple incompatibility of scale and nature. The famous opening passage of that story articulates this philosophy directly. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents, suggesting that human sanity depends upon ignorance of cosmic realities. This philosophical position differed fundamentally from traditional religious or romantic approaches to cosmic themes, which typically portrayed humanity as possessing special significance within divine plans or natural hierarchies. Lovecraft's materialism led him to conclude that consciousness itself might be an evolutionary accident, a brief flickering of self-awareness in organisms whose survival depended upon maintaining comfortable illusions about their cosmic importance. The entities of his fiction, Cthulhu, Azathoth, Yog-Sothoth, serve as embodiments of this philosophical position, representing cosmic forces that operate according to principles entirely divorced from human understanding or concern. Their indifference to human existence proves more terrifying than active malevolence because it suggests that humanity's struggles, achievements, and sufferings possess no ultimate significance within the broader cosmic context. This philosophical framework enabled Lovecraft to create horror effects that transcended immediate narrative circumstances, generating existential dread that persisted beyond individual story conclusions. Lovecraft's treatment of knowledge and epistemology reveals sophisticated engagement with philosophical problems concerning the relationship between human understanding and cosmic reality, particularly the question of whether consciousness evolved to perceive truth or merely to facilitate survival within limited terrestrial environments. His fiction consistently portrays the acquisition of cosmic knowledge as psychologically destructive, suggesting that human mental architecture may be fundamentally incompatible with accurate understanding of universal principles. Characters who glimpse cosmic realities typically experience various forms of mental breakdown, from temporary confusion through selective amnesia to complete psychological collapse, implying that madness represents not pathological response, but appropriate recognition of humanity's cosmic situation. This epistemological pessimism drew upon contemporary debates in philosophy and psychology about the reliability of human perception and reasoning, particularly the emerging recognition that consciousness had evolved to serve biological rather than philosophical purposes. The protagonists of stories like The Color Out of Space and The Dunwich Horror function as unwilling philosophers whose investigations force them to confront the limitations of human understanding when applied to cosmic phenomena that exceed terrestrial categories of explanation. The recurring motif of forbidden texts, like the Necronomicon, suggests that certain forms of knowledge are literally dangerous to human consciousness, not because they violate moral prohibitions, but because they reveal truths that human psychology cannot process without fundamental damage. This philosophical position distinguished Lovecraft from Enlightenment traditions that portrayed knowledge as inherently liberating and progressive, instead suggesting that some forms of understanding might be actively harmful to the organisms that achieve them. The technique proved remarkably prescient, anticipating contemporary philosophical debates about the relationship between evolved cognition and objective reality. The temporal dimensions of Lovecraft's cosmic horror reflect his sophisticated understanding of geological and astronomical time scales that dwarf human historical experience, while suggesting the ultimate impermanence of all terrestrial achievements. His fiction consistently emphasizes the vast ages during which alien civilizations flourished on Earth before humanity's emergence, presenting human history as a brief recent episode in a much longer and stranger planetary narrative. Stories like At the Mountains of Madness reveal evidence of Antarctic civilizations that existed for millions of years before declining into decadence and extinction, suggesting that even cosmic intelligences remain subject to historical cycles that render all achievements temporary. This temporal perspective transforms traditional historical consciousness, which typically treats human civilization as the culmination of progressive development, into recognition of humanity's probable fate as another brief experiment in terrestrial consciousness. The technique of archaeological discovery enables Lovecraft's protagonists to encounter physical evidence of these vast temporal scales, from the cyclopean ruins of The Call of Cthulhu to the fossil records examined in The Shadow Out of Time. These discoveries consistently reveal that terrestrial life has been shaped by cosmic forces operating across time periods that exceed human comprehension, suggesting that contemporary civilization exists within contexts too vast for normal historical understanding. The philosophical implications extend beyond simple temporal humility to fundamental questions about the relationship between consciousness and cosmic development, particularly whether awareness itself represents a stable feature of universal evolution or merely a temporary accident in the local arrangement of matter and energy. This temporal philosophy enabled Lovecraft to create horror effects that transcended immediate narrative circumstances, generating anxieties about humanity's ultimate fate that resonated with contemporary concerns about civilization's fragility in the face of natural forces. The question of cosmic purpose, or its absence, constitutes perhaps the most philosophically radical aspect of Lovecraft's materialist horror, as his fiction systematically rejects teleological interpretations of cosmic development in favor of mechanistic explanations that offer no ultimate meaning or direction for universal processes. Unlike traditional supernatural horror, which typically portrayed cosmic forces as operating according to comprehensible moral principles, whether benevolent or malevolent, Lovecraft's entities embody pure amorality, pursuing goals that bear no relationship to human ethical categories. Azathoth, described as the blind idiot god, whose chaotic emanations sustain universal existence, exemplifies this philosophical position by suggesting that cosmic reality itself might lack conscious purpose or intelligent direction. This mechanistic cosmology drew upon contemporary developments in physics and astronomy that revealed the universe as a system governed by mathematical laws rather than moral principles, operating according to patterns that maintain no special relationship to conscious beings or their values. The horror of stories like The Color Out of Space emerges precisely from this recognition that cosmic forces treat terrestrial life according to purely physical principles, neither maliciously destructive nor benevolently protective, but simply indifferent to the survival or suffering of conscious organisms. This philosophical framework enabled Lovecraft to explore existential themes that transcended traditional religious or humanistic consolations, creating narratives that offered no possibility of ultimate redemption or cosmic justice. The technique proved remarkably influential in subsequent philosophy and literature, anticipating existentialist and absurdist movements that would achieve broader cultural recognition decades after Lovecraft's death, while establishing patterns of cosmic horror that continue to resonate with contemporary audiences facing their own encounters with apparently meaningless universal forces. The synthesis of these philosophical elements creates a coherent worldview that transforms cosmic horror from simple entertainment into serious engagement with fundamental questions about consciousness, reality, and human significance within an indifferent universe, establishing the intellectual foundation that enables Lovecraft's literary techniques to achieve their distinctive effects, while providing the conceptual framework that subsequent writers would both extend and react against in developing their own approaches to cosmic themes. This philosophical sophistication explains both the initial resistance to Lovecraft's work among readers expecting conventional supernatural resolution, and its eventual recognition as addressing enduring human concerns about existence, knowledge, and meaning in ways that remain relevant to contemporary anxieties about humanity's place within an increasingly vast and incomprehensible cosmos, thus preparing the groundwork for examining how these abstract philosophical principles achieved concrete literary expression through the specific cosmic entities and narrative structures that would define the mature development of cosmic horror as a distinctive literary mode. The philosophical architecture of cosmic horror rests upon a fundamental inversion of anthropocentric worldviews, replacing humanity's assumed cosmic significance with a systematic exploration of existential insignificance that challenges the basic assumptions underlying Western philosophical and religious traditions. Lovecraft's materialist philosophy, deeply influenced by the scientific discoveries of his era, constructed a universe in which consciousness represents not the culmination of cosmic development, but a temporary accident in the arrangement of matter and energy, destined for inevitable extinction without leaving meaningful traces of its brief existence. This philosophical position emerged from his engagement with evolutionary biology, which revealed humanity's recent emergence from animal origins, and contemporary astronomy, which demonstrated the universe's vast scale and apparent indifference to terrestrial life. The horror of cosmic insignificance operates not through supernatural violation of natural law, but through rigorous acceptance of natural law's implications for human existence and meaning. Consider carefully how this philosophical framework transforms traditional horror's reliance on external threats into a more fundamental challenge to human self-understanding, creating narratives that generate existential dread rather than simple fear. The concept of cosmic insignificance thus becomes not merely a theme within cosmic horror, but its defining philosophical principle, the intellectual foundation upon which all other elements of the genre depend for their ultimate effectiveness and cultural resonance. The doctrine of cosmic indifference constitutes perhaps the most psychologically disturbing aspect of Lovecraft's philosophical system, as it suggests that the universe operates according to principles that maintain no special relationship to conscious beings or their survival, moral development, or spiritual aspirations. Unlike traditional theological systems that portrayed cosmic forces as actively concerned with human behavior, whether benevolently or malevolently, Lovecraft's materialism presents a universe that simply does not recognize consciousness as possessing any particular significance within the broader patterns of physical development. This indifference proves more terrifying than active hostility because it offers no possibility of negotiation, appeasement, or heroic resistance. The cosmic forces revealed in stories like The Color Out of Space treat terrestrial life according to purely physical principles, neither maliciously destructive nor benevolently protective, but operating with the same mechanical regularity as gravitational or electromagnetic phenomena. The entities of cosmic horror, Azathoth, Cthulhu, Yog-Sothoth, embody this philosophical position by pursuing goals that bear no comprehensible relationship to human ethical categories, existing in states that transcend conventional distinctions between good and evil, creation and destruction, order and chaos. Their actions affect human civilization not through conscious intention, but through simple incompatibility of scale and nature, much as a natural disaster destroys human settlements, without moral consideration for the suffering involved. This philosophical framework enables cosmic horror to explore existential themes that transcend immediate narrative circumstances, generating anxieties about humanity's ultimate meaninglessness that persist beyond individual story conclusions, and continue to influence readers' fundamental assumptions about their place within the cosmic order. The epistemological dimensions of cosmic horror reveal Lovecraft's sophisticated engagement with philosophical problems concerning the relationship between human consciousness and objective reality, particularly the disturbing possibility that accurate understanding of cosmic truth might be fundamentally incompatible with psychological stability or biological survival. His fiction consistently portrays the acquisition of cosmic knowledge as psychologically destructive, suggesting that human mental architecture evolved to facilitate survival within limited terrestrial environments, rather than to perceive universal truths that might prove harmful to the organisms achieving such understanding. The protagonists of stories like The Call of Cthulhu and The Dunwich Horror function as unwilling philosophers whose investigations force them to confront the limitations of human cognition when applied to cosmic phenomena that exceed terrestrial categories of explanation. Their frequent experiences of mental breakdown, from temporary confusion through selective amnesia to complete psychological collapse, suggests that madness represents not pathological response, but appropriate recognition of humanity's cosmic situation when confronted with realities too vast and alien for evolved consciousness to process. This epistemological pessimism anticipated contemporary philosophical debates about the relationship between evolved cognition and objective reality, particularly the recognition that natural selection shaped human reasoning to serve reproductive success rather than philosophical truth. The recurring motif of forbidden texts like the Necronomicon embodies this philosophical position by suggesting that certain forms of knowledge are literally dangerous to human consciousness, not because they violate moral prohibitions, but because they reveal truths that human psychology cannot accommodate without fundamental damage to the cognitive structures necessary for normal functioning. The temporal philosophy underlying cosmic horror transforms conventional historical consciousness through systematic emphasis on geological and astronomical time scales that reduce human civilization to a brief recent episode in planetary development, while suggesting the ultimate impermanence of all terrestrial achievements. Lovecraft's fiction consistently reveals evidence of alien civilizations that flourished for millions of years before humanity's emergence, presenting current human dominance as a temporary accident rather than the inevitable result of progressive cosmic development. Stories like At the Mountains of Madness and The Shadow Out of Time employ archaeological and paleontological frameworks to demonstrate that terrestrial history encompasses vast periods during which non-human intelligences shaped planetary development according to principles entirely divorced from human understanding or benefit. These temporal revelations transform traditional religious and humanistic assumptions about human specialness within cosmic development, suggesting instead that consciousness itself may represent merely a temporary experiment in the local arrangement of matter and energy. The technique of deep time perspective enables cosmic horror to generate anxieties that transcend immediate narrative threats, creating implications about humanity's probable fate that resonate with contemporary concerns about civilization's fragility in the face of natural forces operating across scales that dwarf human historical experience. The philosophical implications extend beyond simple temporal humility to fundamental questions about whether awareness possesses any stable significance within universal development, or whether terrestrial consciousness represents merely another phase in planetary evolution, destined for eventual replacement by forms of existence better adapted to cosmic realities. This temporal philosophy provides the intellectual foundation for cosmic horror's distinctive treatment of human achievement and aspiration, as ultimately meaningless within the broader context of universal development. The mechanistic cosmology that underlies Lovecraft's philosophical system systematically rejects teleological interpretations of cosmic development in favor of purely physical explanations that offer no ultimate purpose or direction for universal processes, creating a worldview in which consciousness emerges accidentally from material interactions rather than fulfilling predetermined cosmic functions. This materialist framework draws upon contemporary developments in physics and astronomy that revealed the universe as operating according to mathematical laws rather than moral principles, maintaining patterns that bear no special relationship to conscious beings or their ethical categories. Azathoth, described as the blind idiot god whose chaotic emanations sustain universal existence, exemplifies this philosophical position by suggesting that cosmic reality itself lacks conscious purpose or intelligent direction, operating instead through mechanical processes that generate complexity without intention or meaning. The horror of this mechanistic vision lies not in supernatural violation of natural law, but in rigorous acceptance of natural law's implications for human significance, particularly the recognition that consciousness may possess no more cosmic importance than any other temporary arrangement of atoms and energy. This philosophical framework enables cosmic horror to explore existential themes that transcend traditional religious or humanistic consolations, creating narratives that offer no possibility of ultimate redemption, cosmic justice, or meaningful survival beyond biological extinction. The mechanistic cosmology thus provides both the intellectual foundation for cosmic horror's distinctive effects and its most radical challenge to conventional human self-understanding, suggesting that existence itself may be fundamentally purposeless, despite the intense subjective experience of meaning that characterizes conscious life. The synthesis of these core philosophical concepts, cosmic insignificance, universal indifference, epistemological pessimism, temporal humility, and mechanistic cosmology, creates a coherent worldview that transforms cosmic horror from simple entertainment into serious philosophical investigation of fundamental questions about consciousness, reality, and human meaning within an apparently purposeless universe. This philosophical sophistication explains both the initial resistance to Lovecraft's work among readers expecting conventional supernatural resolution and its eventual recognition as addressing enduring human concerns in ways that remain relevant to contemporary anxieties about existence, knowledge, and meaning in an increasingly vast and incomprehensible cosmos. The durability of these philosophical themes across nearly a century of cultural change suggests that cosmic horror taps into persistent features of human psychological and intellectual development, particularly the tension between evolved consciousness that seeks meaning and purpose, and rational understanding that reveals no ultimate foundation for such psychological needs within the broader cosmic order, thus establishing the conceptual framework that enables specific cosmic entities and narrative structures to achieve their distinctive effects, while providing the intellectual foundation that subsequent writers would both extend and react against in developing their own approaches to themes of cosmic dread and existential uncertainty. Azathoth occupies the apex of Lovecraft's cosmic hierarchy as the blind idiot god, whose chaotic emanations sustain the fundamental structure of reality itself, embodying the philosophical principle that universal existence operates without conscious purpose or intelligent direction. First introduced in The Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, 1927, and more fully, developed in The Dreams in the Witch House, 1933, Azathoth represents Lovecraft's most radical departure from traditional theological concepts of divine authority and cosmic order. Unlike conventional deities who possess intelligence, will, and moral characteristics, Azathoth exists in a state of perpetual mindless chaos at the center of infinity, surrounded by the piping of flutes played by nameless dancers whose music maintains the stability of dimensional barriers. This imagery suggests that reality itself depends upon fundamentally irrational processes, that the mathematical laws governing physical existence emerge from underlying chaos rather than conscious design. The entity's blindness and idiocy serve not as limitations, but as essential characteristics, implying that ultimate cosmic authority operates without awareness of its effects upon subordinate forms of existence. Lovecraft's descriptions consistently emphasize Azathoth's nuclear nature, suggesting connections to contemporary discoveries in atomic physics that revealed matter's apparent solidity as mere arrangements of energy and empty space. The horror of Azathoth lies not in active malevolence, but in the recognition that universal existence depends upon processes that maintain no relationship to consciousness, meaning, or purpose, transforming the traditional concept of cosmic order into a vision of reality as sustained accident rather than purposeful creation. Nyarlathotep functions as cosmic horror's most psychologically complex entity, serving simultaneously as messenger of the outer gods and active agent of chaos, who derives apparent pleasure from manipulating and destroying human consciousness through revelation of cosmic truths. Unlike other cosmic entities who remain largely indifferent to human existence, Nyarlathotep demonstrates active interest in terrestrial civilization, though this attention proves invariably destructive to those who encounter his influence. His first appearance in the prose poem Nyarlathotep, 1920, established him as a figure capable of assuming human form while possessing knowledge and abilities that transcend normal natural limitations, enabling him to function as an interface between cosmic reality and human understanding. Subsequent stories expanded his characterization to include multiple manifestations: the Black Pharaoh in Egypt, the crawling chaos in various forms, the haunter of the dark in Providence, suggesting an entity whose true nature exceeds any single physical representation. This protean quality enables Nyarlathotep to serve diverse narrative functions while maintaining essential characteristics. He possesses genuine intelligence rather than mindless chaos, demonstrates understanding of human psychology and motivation, and appears to derive satisfaction from revealing cosmic truths that destroy human sanity and civilization. The entity's role as messenger suggests that cosmic horror's ultimate revelations require active communication rather than passive discovery, that the destruction of human illusions about cosmic significance demands an intelligence capable of understanding what it destroys. This psychological dimension distinguishes Nyarlathotep from other cosmic entities, and explains his particular effectiveness in stories that explore the relationship between knowledge and madness, consciousness, and cosmic reality. Yog Sothoth embodies the cosmic horror principle that space and time represent merely local conditions within terrestrial experience, rather than fundamental features of universal reality, existing simultaneously in all dimensions and temporal periods while remaining accessible to human contact under specific circumstances. Described as the gate and the key in The Dunwich Horror, 1929, Yog Sothoth functions both as cosmic entity and as dimensional threshold, suggesting that ultimate reality exists in states that transcend normal spatial and temporal limitations. Lovecraft's descriptions consistently emphasize the entity's relationship to forbidden knowledge, particularly the mathematical and geometric principles that govern dimensional transitions and temporal manipulation. The entity's role in The Dunwich Horror, as progenitor of hybrid offspring, demonstrates how cosmic forces might achieve physical manifestation within terrestrial environments, while maintaining essential alienness that renders such manifestations unstable and ultimately incompatible with normal natural processes. His appearances in Through the Gates of the Silver Key, 1934, explore themes of consciousness transfer across dimensional boundaries, suggesting that identity itself might prove more fluid than normally assumed when subjected to cosmic rather than terrestrial conditions. The entity's association with the Silver Key artifact implies that access to cosmic reality requires specific tools or knowledge, rather than random encounter, that the boundaries between normal and cosmic existence can be deliberately breached by those possessing appropriate understanding. This accessibility distinguishes Yog Sothoth from more remote cosmic entities, while emphasizing the dangerous nature of such contact, as the entity's revelations consistently prove destructive to human psychology and physical existence. The philosophical implications extend beyond immediate narrative effects to fundamental questions about the nature of consciousness, identity, and existence within cosmic contexts that exceed normal human understanding. Shub-Niggurath, characterized as the black goat of the woods with 1,000 young, represents cosmic horror's exploration of perverted fertility and reproductive processes that operate according to alien principles fundamentally incompatible with terrestrial biological development. Though mentioned in numerous stories, the entity receives its most detailed treatment in The Whisperer in Darkness, 1931, and related tales that emphasize themes of hybrid, reproduction, and evolutionary transformation under cosmic influence. Unlike masculine cosmic entities like Azathoth and Yog Sothoth, Shub-Niggurath embodies feminine principles of generation and nurturing, though these characteristics become sources of horror rather than comfort when applied to cosmic rather than terrestrial reproduction. The entity's association with forest environments and rural fertility cults suggests connections to pre-Christian nature religions, though Lovecraft's treatment transforms traditional earth goddess imagery into something alien and threatening to human biological integrity. The 1,000 young, referenced in the entity's title, implies reproductive capacity that exceeds normal natural limitations, suggesting forms of generation that might produce offspring incompatible with terrestrial environmental conditions or human biological systems. Stories featuring Shub-Niggurath typically emphasize themes of genetic contamination and evolutionary regression, as contact with the entity's influence tends to produce physical and psychological changes that represent devolution rather than advancement in human development. This biological horror reflects contemporary anxieties about heredity and genetic integrity, while exploring philosophical questions about the relationship between consciousness and physical form, particularly the possibility that human biological structures might prove inadequate for existence within cosmic rather than terrestrial contexts. The entity thus embodies cosmic horror's distinctive treatment of reproduction and biological development as potentially alien processes rather than familiar natural phenomena. The Necronomicon functions as cosmic horror's most influential fictional artifact, serving simultaneously as plot device, atmospheric element, and philosophical statement about the relationship between knowledge and psychological destruction. Lovecraft's systematic development of this imaginary text across multiple stories created an impression of scholarly authenticity that enhanced the verisimilitude of supernatural elements while providing a consistent framework for accessing cosmic revelations. The book's supposed history, composed by the mad Arab Abdul al-Hazred around 730 CE, translated into Greek and Latin through medieval scholarship, and surviving in carefully guarded copies at major libraries, demonstrates Lovecraft's technique of embedding fantastic elements within realistic academic contexts. The text's contents, as described through fragmentary quotations and scholarly commentary, focus primarily on cosmic entities, dimensional geography, and ritual practices for achieving contact with non-terrestrial intelligences, though Lovecraft deliberately avoided providing comprehensive exposition that might diminish the mystery essential to cosmic horror's effectiveness. The book's reputation for driving readers insane serves both as plot device and philosophical statement, suggesting that certain forms of knowledge possess inherent psychological dangers regardless of the reader's intellectual preparation or moral character. This treatment of forbidden knowledge reflects Lovecraft's epistemological pessimism while providing practical narrative mechanisms for revealing cosmic truths without requiring protagonists to achieve such revelations through direct investigation. The Necronomicon's influence extends far beyond Lovecraft's original stories, as subsequent writers have continued to reference and expand upon its contents, while maintaining its essential character as a source of dangerous cosmic knowledge that challenges human understanding and psychological stability. The synthesis of these specific entities and elements creates a coherent mythological system that transforms abstract philosophical concepts into concrete narrative components capable of generating sustained horror effects, while maintaining internal consistency across multiple stories and collaborative expansions. Each entity embodies particular aspects of cosmic horror's philosophical framework. Azathoth, representing purposeless chaos, Nyarlathotep, demonstrating active cosmic malevolence, Yog-Sothoth, transcending spatial and temporal limitations, Shub-Niggurath, perverting biological processes, and the Necronomicon, providing access to dangerous cosmic knowledge, while contributing to a larger vision of reality in which human existence appears insignificant and ultimately doomed. The effectiveness of these specific elements lies not in their individual characteristics, but in their systematic relationships, their capacity to suggest vast cosmic contexts that extend far beyond immediate narrative requirements, while maintaining sufficient ambiguity to preserve the essential mystery that cosmic horror requires for its distinctive psychological effects, thus establishing the concrete mythological framework that enables cosmic horror's abstract philosophical principles to achieve literary expression, while providing the specific narrative components that subsequent writers would employ, modify, and expand in developing their own contributions to the ongoing evolution of cosmic horror as both literary genre and cultural mythology. Madness in cosmic horror operates not as simple psychological pathology, but as the inevitable consequence of human consciousness encountering cosmic realities that exceed the evolutionary limitations of terrestrial cognition, serving simultaneously as narrative device, philosophical statement, and realistic psychological response to impossible knowledge. Unlike Gothic horror traditions that typically portrayed insanity as moral punishment or supernatural curse, Lovecraft's treatment of madness emerges from his materialist understanding of consciousness as a biological adaptation that evolved to facilitate survival within limited terrestrial environments rather than to perceive universal truths. The protagonists of stories like The Call of Cthulhu and At the Mountains of Madness experience various forms of mental breakdown, not because they possess weak characters or moral failings, but because they attempt to process information that human cognitive architecture cannot accommodate without fundamental damage to the neural structures necessary for normal psychological functioning. This scientific approach to madness reflects contemporary developments in psychology and neuroscience that revealed the biological basis of consciousness, while suggesting that mental stability depends upon maintaining comfortable illusions about reality, rather than achieving accurate understanding of cosmic conditions. Consider carefully how this treatment transforms madness from external threat into internal recognition, from pathological condition into appropriate response to cosmic truth, creating a philosophical framework in which sanity itself becomes suspect as a form of protective ignorance that shields consciousness from unbearable realities. The function of madness thus extends beyond immediate narrative requirements to fundamental questions about the relationship between psychological health and cosmic knowledge, establishing one of cosmic horror's most distinctive and philosophically sophisticated themes. The epistemological dimensions of madness in cosmic horror reveal Lovecraft's sophisticated understanding of the paradoxical relationship between knowledge and psychological stability, particularly the disturbing possibility that accurate perception of cosmic reality might be fundamentally incompatible with the cognitive structures necessary for human survival and social functioning. His fiction consistently portrays the acquisition of cosmic knowledge as a destructive process that proceeds through predictable stages. Initial curiosity about mysterious phenomena, systematic investigation using scholarly methods, gradual accumulation of evidence suggesting impossible realities, sudden revelation of cosmic truths, and finally psychological collapse as consciousness fails to integrate incompatible information. The narrator of The Call of Cthulhu exemplifies this epistemological trajectory, beginning as a rational skeptic who approaches his uncle's strange papers with academic detachment, progressing through careful documentation of seemingly unrelated incidents, and culminating in recognition of cosmic patterns too vast and alien for human understanding to accommodate. His famous conclusion that the most merciful thing in the world is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents suggests that sanity depends upon cognitive fragmentation rather than comprehensive understanding, that mental health requires maintaining gaps in knowledge rather than achieving complete awareness of cosmic conditions. This philosophical position inverts traditional Enlightenment assumptions about the relationship between knowledge and human welfare, suggesting instead that certain forms of understanding prove actively harmful to the organisms that achieve them. The technique enables cosmic horror to explore themes of intellectual limitation and epistemological humility, while creating narratives that generate sustained anxiety about the psychological costs of curiosity and investigation, transforming the pursuit of knowledge from noble endeavor into dangerous compulsion that threatens the stability necessary for continued existence. The social and cultural dimensions of madness in cosmic horror reflect Lovecraft's acute awareness of how psychological breakdown functions not merely as individual pathology, but as systematic challenge to collective human understanding and institutional authority. His protagonists typically occupy positions of intellectual respectability, professors, archaeologists, antiquarians, whose scholarly credentials initially lend credibility to their investigations, while their subsequent mental deterioration calls into question the reliability of academic and scientific institutions more broadly. The pattern of respected experts descending into apparent insanity while insisting upon the reality of their impossible discoveries creates profound ambiguity about the relationship between social consensus and objective truth, suggesting that collective sanity might depend upon systematic ignorance of cosmic realities rather than accurate understanding of universal conditions. Stories like The Dunwich Horror and The Whisperer in Darkness explore how communities respond to individuals who claim knowledge of cosmic threats, typically dismissing such warnings as evidence of mental illness rather than seriously investigating their validity. This social treatment of cosmic knowledge as pathological symptom rather than legitimate information reflects broader cultural patterns of resistance to ideas that challenge fundamental assumptions about human significance and cosmic order. The technique enables Lovecraft to examine themes of intellectual isolation and social alienation, while creating narratives that question the relationship between individual insight and collective understanding, particularly the disturbing possibility that accurate perception of cosmic reality might necessarily result in exclusion from normal human social structures. The social dimensions of madness thus extend beyond immediate psychological effects to fundamental questions about the compatibility between cosmic knowledge and human civilization, suggesting that collective sanity and individual cosmic awareness might prove mutually exclusive conditions. The linguistic and communicative aspects of madness in cosmic horror demonstrate Lovecraft's sophisticated understanding of how psychological breakdown manifests through the deterioration of language and the failure of normal communicative processes when consciousness encounters realities that exceed conventional descriptive capacity. His protagonists frequently struggle to articulate their cosmic revelations, resorting to fragmentary notes, cryptic warnings, and incoherent ramblings that reflect the inadequacy of human language for conveying alien realities rather than simple mental confusion. The technique of unreliable narration enables Lovecraft to suggest cosmic truths while maintaining essential ambiguity about their objective reality, as readers must interpret testimony from sources whose psychological stability has been compromised by the very experiences they attempt to describe. The recurring emphasis on unspeakable and indescribable phenomena serves both as atmospheric device and philosophical statement, suggesting that cosmic realities operate according to principles that exceed not only human understanding, but human communicative capacity. Characters who encounter cosmic entities frequently report difficulties with language itself, describing geometries that hurt to look upon, sounds that cannot be properly heard, and experiences that resist translation into normal conceptual categories. This linguistic breakdown reflects both realistic psychological response to traumatic experience and systematic exploration of the limitations of human communication when applied to cosmic rather than terrestrial phenomena. The technique creates narratives that engage readers in the interpretive process while emphasizing the fundamental inadequacy of language for conveying cosmic truths, transforming the act of reading itself into an investigation of the relationship between consciousness, communication, and cosmic reality. The linguistic dimensions of madness thus function simultaneously as literary device and philosophical exploration, creating effects that persist beyond immediate narrative circumstances, while establishing patterns of communicative failure that subsequent cosmic horror writers would continue to employ and develop. The temporal aspects of madness in cosmic horror reveal how psychological breakdown functions as a mechanism for exploring the relationship between human consciousness and cosmic time scales that dwarf normal historical experience, while suggesting the ultimate inadequacy of evolved cognition for comprehending universal development. Characters who encounter evidence of vast temporal scales, geological ages during which alien civilizations flourished, astronomical periods during which cosmic entities have pursued incomprehensible goals, frequently experience forms of temporal disorientation that manifest as madness within normal psychological categories. The protagonists of The Shadow Out of Time and At the Mountains of Madness undergo experiences that span millions of years, encountering forms of consciousness that have existed across temporal periods that exceed human historical understanding, while maintaining awareness of their own brief existence within these vast contexts. This temporal perspective proves psychologically destructive not through supernatural influence, but through simple recognition of humanity's recent emergence and probable extinction within cosmic development that operates according to scales that render individual human experience meaningless. The technique enables Lovecraft to explore themes of temporal humility and historical insignificance while creating narratives that generate existential anxiety about humanity's place within universal development. The madness that results from temporal revelation thus functions as realistic psychological response to accurate understanding of cosmic conditions, rather than pathological reaction to supernatural influence, suggesting that mental stability depends upon maintaining comfortable illusions about human historical significance rather than achieving accurate awareness of universal temporal scales. This temporal dimension of madness extends beyond immediate narrative effects to fundamental questions about the relationship between consciousness and cosmic time, establishing patterns of psychological response that continue to characterize contemporary cosmic horror while reflecting persistent human anxieties about temporal insignificance and historical impermanence. The therapeutic and philosophical implications of madness in cosmic horror suggest that psychological breakdown, rather than representing simple pathology requiring medical intervention, might constitute appropriate intellectual response to cosmic conditions that exceed the limitations of human understanding and social adaptation. Lovecraft's treatment consistently implies that the characters who descend into apparent insanity possess greater awareness of cosmic reality than those who maintain normal psychological functioning. That madness represents a form of cosmic enlightenment rather than mere mental illness. This philosophical position inverts conventional medical and social approaches to psychological breakdown, suggesting that sanity itself might be understood as a form of protective ignorance that enables continued functioning within human social structures while preventing accurate perception of cosmic conditions. The technique creates profound ambiguity about the relationship between psychological health and cosmic knowledge, forcing readers to consider whether mental stability or cosmic awareness should be prioritized when these conditions prove mutually incompatible. The implications extend beyond immediate narrative circumstances to fundamental questions about the nature of consciousness, reality, and human adaptation to cosmic conditions that may exceed the evolutionary limitations of terrestrial cognition. Establishing madness as both literary device and philosophical exploration that continues to influence contemporary approaches to cosmic horror while reflecting enduring human concerns about the psychological costs of knowledge and the relationship between individual awareness and collective sanity within an apparently indifferent and incomprehensible universe, thus providing the foundation for examining how these themes of psychological breakdown and cosmic revelation achieve concrete expression through specific narrative structures and forbidden knowledge that transforms abstract philosophical concepts into immediate psychological threats. The concept of forbidden knowledge in cosmic horror transcends traditional moral or religious prohibitions to explore the fundamental epistemological question of whether certain forms of understanding might be inherently destructive to the consciousness that achieves them, regardless of ethical considerations or divine commandments. Unlike conventional treatments of forbidden knowledge that typically frame prohibition in terms of moral transgression, eating from the tree of knowledge, opening Pandora's box, or violating divine will, Lovecraft's approach emerges from materialist philosophy that treats consciousness as a biological adaptation, evolved for terrestrial survival rather than cosmic comprehension. His fiction consistently suggests that human cognitive architecture possesses inherent limitations that render certain forms of knowledge literally dangerous to psychological stability and social functioning, not because such knowledge violates moral principles, but because it reveals truths that evolved consciousness cannot process without fundamental damage to the neural structures necessary for continued existence. The protagonists of stories like The Call of Cthulhu and The Color Out of Space discover cosmic realities not through moral transgression, but through legitimate scholarly investigation. Yet, their acquisition of accurate understanding proves psychologically destructive precisely because human consciousness evolved to facilitate survival within limited terrestrial environments rather than to perceive universal truths. This naturalistic approach to forbidden knowledge transforms the theme from theological concern into scientific problem, suggesting that the boundaries of safe human understanding are determined by evolutionary biology rather than divine prohibition. Consider carefully how this materialist framework enables cosmic horror to explore themes of intellectual limitation and epistemological humility, while creating narratives that question the fundamental assumptions underlying scientific rationalism and scholarly inquiry. The institutional dimensions of forbidden knowledge in cosmic horror reveal Lovecraft's sophisticated understanding of how academic and scholarly institutions function both as repositories of dangerous information and as mechanisms for controlling access to potentially harmful understanding through systems of classification, restriction, and professional gatekeeping. His creation of Miskatonic University's library, with its carefully guarded collection of occult manuscripts and restricted sections accessible only to authorized researchers, reflects realistic academic practices while suggesting that scholarly institutions possess implicit awareness of knowledge's potential dangers. The recurring figure of the academic librarian, Professor Armitage in The Dunwich Horror, the unnamed narrator's uncle in The Call of Cthulhu, embodies this institutional approach to dangerous knowledge, serving simultaneously as guardian of forbidden texts and cautious investigator of their contents. These characters typically possess sufficient scholarly expertise to recognize the significance of cosmic revelations, while maintaining enough institutional responsibility to limit their distribution to potentially unprepared audiences. The technique demonstrates how forbidden knowledge operates not merely as individual psychological threat, but as systematic challenge to educational and cultural institutions that depend upon controlled dissemination of information for their continued functioning. Libraries, universities, and scholarly societies in Lovecraft's fiction serve as buffers between cosmic reality and general human awareness, attempting to preserve dangerous knowledge for future investigation while preventing its premature or uncontrolled release into broader social circulation. This institutional framework enables cosmic horror to explore themes of intellectual responsibility and cultural preservation, while creating narratives that examine the tension between scholarly curiosity and social protection, suggesting that the advancement of human knowledge may require careful management rather than unrestricted inquiry. The institutional dimensions thus extend beyond immediate narrative requirements to fundamental questions about the relationship between individual understanding and collective welfare within educational and cultural systems, designed to promote rather than restrict the acquisition of knowledge. The textual manifestations of forbidden knowledge, primarily the Necronomicon, but including numerous other fictional grimoires and scholarly works, function as concrete narrative devices that enable cosmic horror to explore abstract epistemological themes, while providing specific mechanisms for plot development and atmospheric enhancement. Lovecraft's systematic development of these imaginary texts demonstrates sophisticated understanding of how written documents serve both as repositories of information and as cultural artifacts that carry their own histories of creation, transmission, and interpretation across historical periods. The Necronomicon's elaborate fictional bibliography, original Arabic composition by Abdul al-Hazred, Greek translation as Necronomicon, Latin rendering by Olaus Wormius, and subsequent preservation in carefully cataloged copies at major research libraries, creates an impression of scholarly authenticity that enhances the verisimilitude of supernatural elements, while suggesting the existence of alternative intellectual traditions that operate parallel to conventional academic disciplines. The recurring emphasis on translation problems and linguistic difficulties encountered by scholars attempting to interpret these texts reflects both realistic challenges of historical scholarship and systematic exploration of the limitations of human language when applied to cosmic rather than terrestrial phenomena. Characters who study forbidden texts frequently report that certain passages resist comprehension, that specific concepts cannot be adequately translated into human languages, and that sustained study produces psychological effects ranging from mild confusion to complete mental breakdown. This textual approach enables cosmic horror to examine themes of communicative limitation and interpretive failure, while creating narratives that engage readers in scholarly investigation of impossible materials. The technique transforms the act of reading itself into a potentially dangerous activity, suggesting that certain forms of written knowledge possess inherent psychological hazards regardless of the reader's intellectual preparation or moral character. The textual dimensions of forbidden knowledge thus function simultaneously as a literary device and philosophical exploration, creating effects that question the fundamental assumptions underlying scholarly inquiry and intellectual communication. The genealogical aspects of forbidden knowledge in cosmic horror demonstrate how dangerous understanding typically spreads through networks of personal relationship and institutional connection, rather than through random encounter or supernatural influence, creating patterns of transmission that reflect realistic social and academic processes while emphasizing the cumulative nature of cosmic revelation. Lovecraft's protagonists rarely stumble upon cosmic truths accidentally, but instead inherit dangerous knowledge through family connections, scholarly mentorship, or professional association with previous investigators who have approached cosmic realities through systematic inquiry. The narrator of The Call of Cthulhu discovers cosmic horror through his deceased uncle's papers, while the protagonist of The Case of Charles Dexter Ward uncovers ancestral involvement with occult practices that connect contemporary events to historical patterns of forbidden research. This genealogical transmission suggests that forbidden knowledge possesses social and cultural dimensions that extend beyond individual psychological experience, that cosmic awareness tends to concentrate within particular families, institutions, and intellectual communities rather than distributing randomly throughout human population. The technique enables cosmic horror to explore themes of inherited responsibility and cultural transmission while creating narratives that examine how dangerous knowledge persists across generational and institutional boundaries despite efforts at suppression or containment. The genealogical patterns also suggest that cosmic horror operates according to principles of selection rather than random distribution, that certain individuals and groups possess characteristics, intellectual curiosity, scholarly training, family history, that make them more susceptible to cosmic revelation than others. This selective transmission reflects both realistic patterns of knowledge, distribution within academic and cultural institutions, and systematic exploration of the relationship between individual psychology and cosmic awareness, suggesting that forbidden knowledge seeks appropriate recipients rather than spreading indiscriminately throughout human consciousness. The genealogical dimensions thus extend beyond immediate narrative effects to fundamental questions about the social and cultural mechanisms through which dangerous understanding achieves persistence and transmission across historical periods. The psychological mechanisms through which forbidden knowledge achieves its destructive effects reveal Lovecraft's sophisticated understanding of how human consciousness responds to information that exceeds evolutionary limitations, while challenging fundamental assumptions about the relationship between learning and psychological welfare. His fiction consistently portrays the acquisition of cosmic knowledge as a gradual process that proceeds through predictable stages: initial intellectual curiosity about mysterious phenomena, systematic investigation using conventional scholarly methods, accumulation of evidence suggesting impossible realities, sudden recognition of cosmic truths, and finally psychological collapse as consciousness fails to integrate incompatible information within existing cognitive structures. The technique demonstrates how forbidden knowledge operates not through supernatural influence, but through natural psychological processes that become destructive when applied to cosmic rather than terrestrial phenomena, suggesting that the human mind possesses inherent limitations that render certain forms of understanding literally unbearable. Characters who encounter cosmic realities frequently report experiences of cognitive overload, temporal disorientation, and conceptual confusion that reflect realistic psychological responses to traumatic revelation rather than supernatural punishment for moral transgression. The emphasis on gradual revelation rather than sudden exposure suggests that forbidden knowledge achieves maximum destructive potential through sustained investigation rather than brief encounter, that cosmic awareness requires time to undermine the psychological structures necessary for normal human functioning. This psychological approach enables cosmic horror to explore themes of intellectual limitation and epistemological humility, while creating narratives that question conventional assumptions about the relationship between knowledge and human welfare, particularly the Enlightenment belief that increased understanding necessarily promotes individual and social progress. The psychological mechanisms thus function as both realistic character development and philosophical exploration, establishing patterns of cognitive response that continue to characterize contemporary cosmic horror while reflecting persistent human anxieties about the mental costs of veracity and investigation. The cultural and philosophical implications of forbidden knowledge's theme extend beyond immediate narrative effects to fundamental questions about the nature of human understanding, intellectual responsibility, and the relationship between individual awareness and collective welfare within educational and social systems designed to promote rather than restrict the acquisition of knowledge. Lovecraft's treatment suggests that the traditional Western emphasis on unrestricted inquiry and intellectual freedom may be based upon false assumptions about the compatibility between human psychological limitations and cosmic reality, that certain forms of understanding might require careful management or complete prohibition, regardless of their theoretical or practical value. This philosophical position challenges basic assumptions underlying scientific rationalism, academic freedom, and educational policy while raising profound questions about who should possess authority to determine which forms of knowledge prove too dangerous for general circulation. The theme thus engages with contemporary debates about information control, intellectual responsibility, and the social management of potentially harmful understanding, while maintaining its essential character as exploration of cosmic rather than merely political or social concerns, establishing forbidden knowledge as both literary device and philosophical framework that continues to influence contemporary cosmic horror while reflecting enduring human tensions between curiosity and safety, individual enlightenment and collective welfare, within an apparently indifferent universe that may contain truths too terrible for evolved consciousness to bear without fundamental damage to the psychological structures necessary for continued human existence and social functioning, thus providing the thematic foundation for examining how these abstract epistemological concerns achieve concrete literary expression through specific narrative structures and character development that transform philosophical speculation into immediate psychological and cultural threats. The literary genesis of cosmic horror's most enduring entities occurred not through systematic planning, but through Lovecraft's gradual recognition that his scattered weird tales could achieve greater impact through interconnected references and shared mythological frameworks, beginning with tentative experiments in cross-referencing that eventually evolved into comprehensive world-building. The earliest appearance of what would become central mythos elements can be traced to Dagon, 1917, though this brief story initially functioned as isolated weird tale rather than foundational mythology, describing a narrator's encounter with a cyclopean stone monolith bearing hieroglyphic carvings that suggest vast antiquity and non-human origin. The story's imagery, particularly its emphasis on oceanic depths concealing prehistoric civilizations, and its protagonist's descent into madness following impossible revelation, established atmospheric and thematic patterns that would characterize Lovecraft's mature cosmic horror, though the specific entity Dagon remained relatively undeveloped compared to later mythological creations. The narrative technique of scholarly documentation, with its careful attention to geographical detail and archaeological speculation, demonstrated Lovecraft's emerging understanding of how pseudo-academic verisimilitude could enhance supernatural elements while creating frameworks for future elaboration. This early experiment revealed both the potential and limitations of isolated weird tales, as Dagon achieved atmospheric effectiveness through suggestion and ambiguity, yet lacked the systematic development that would distinguish Lovecraft's later mythological work. Consider carefully how this initial story established crucial precedents for cosmic horror's distinctive treatment of ancient civilizations, oceanic mysteries, and scholarly investigation, while demonstrating the atmospheric techniques that would enable more complex mythological development in subsequent narratives. The Nameless City, 1921, represents Lovecraft's first sustained attempt to create a comprehensive weird tale that combined archaeological speculation with cosmic horror themes, introducing the crucial concept of pre-human civilizations that preceded terrestrial history, while establishing the literary framework that would support more elaborate mythological development. The story's famous couplet, "That is not dead, which can eternal lie, and with strange eons even death may die," provided cosmic horror with one of its most memorable expressions of temporal transcendence while articulating philosophical themes that would recur throughout Lovecraft's subsequent work. The narrative follows an unnamed archaeologist's investigation of ruins in the Arabian desert, discovering evidence of a civilization that flourished millions of years before human emergence, populated by reptilian beings whose alien architecture and hieroglyphic records suggest intelligence fundamentally different from human consciousness. The story's detailed exploration of non-Euclidean geometry, corridors that seem to slope downward yet somehow ascend, chambers whose dimensions appear to shift according to viewing angle, established architectural impossibility as a crucial element of cosmic horror atmosphere, while providing concrete imagery for abstract concepts of dimensional transcendence. The protagonist's gradual recognition that the ancient city's inhabitants may not be entirely extinct, that some form of consciousness persists within the ruins across geological time periods, introduced themes of survival beyond normal biological limitations that would prove central to later mythos development. The story's conclusion, with the narrator's terrified flight from pursuing entities whose nature remains deliberately ambiguous, demonstrated Lovecraft's sophisticated understanding of how suggestion and implication could prove more effective than explicit description in generating sustained horror effects. This narrative established crucial precedents for cosmic horror's treatment of archaeological discovery, ancient civilizations, and temporal transcendence, while providing specific imagery and concepts that would reappear throughout subsequent mythos development. The transformation of isolated atmospheric elements into systematic mythology achieved its first major success with The Call of Cthulhu, 1928, which established the narrative framework and mythological scope that would define cosmic horror as a distinctive literary mode rather than mere collection of weird tales. The story's famous opening declaration, "The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents," articulated cosmic horror's central philosophical premise while establishing the scholarly tone that would characterize Lovecraft's mature narrative style. The three-part structure, moving from academic investigation through historical research to contemporary revelation, demonstrated how cosmic horror could achieve both comprehensive scope and sustained atmospheric intensity through careful organization of diverse materials rather than simple linear development. The introduction of Cthulhu as a specific cosmic entity with detailed physical description, geographical location, and historical context marked a crucial evolution from the suggestive ambiguity of earlier stories toward more systematic mythological construction. Though Lovecraft maintained essential mystery through emphasis on the entity's alien nature and incomprehensible motivations, the story's global scope, incorporating evidence from New Orleans voodoo cults, Greenland archaeology, and Pacific maritime disasters, established cosmic horror's distinctive treatment of worldwide conspiracy and interconnected revelation, while demonstrating how diverse cultural and geographical elements could contribute to unified mythological vision. The careful integration of newspaper clippings, scholarly correspondence, and personal testimony created an impression of documentary authenticity that enhanced supernatural elements while providing practical techniques for managing complex narrative materials across multiple time periods and geographical locations. This systematic approach to mythological development established The Call of Cthulhu as the foundational text of cosmic horror, while providing the structural and thematic framework that would support subsequent elaboration and collaborative expansion. The Color Out of Space, 1927, introduced cosmic horror's distinctive treatment of alien influence through environmental contamination rather than direct entity manifestation, establishing patterns of gradual corruption and biological transformation that would prove influential throughout subsequent weird fiction development. The story's scientific framework, with its emphasis on spectroscopic analysis and electromagnetic radiation, demonstrated Lovecraft's sophisticated understanding of how contemporary scientific concepts could provide plausible explanations for impossible phenomena while maintaining essential mystery about ultimate cosmic forces. The narrative technique of retrospective investigation, with the protagonist gathering testimony from local residents about events that occurred decades earlier, enabled Lovecraft to explore themes of historical persistence and community memory, while creating atmospheric effects through fragmented revelation rather than direct experience. The gradual corruption of the Gardner farm, crops growing to unusual size yet proving inedible, animals developing strange behaviors and physical mutations, family members experiencing psychological deterioration and eventual disappearance, established cosmic horror's distinctive treatment of biological contamination as more terrifying than immediate physical destruction. The story's emphasis on environmental persistence, with the alien influence continuing to affect the landscape long after the initial meteorite impact, introduced themes of cosmic pollution that would resonate with contemporary environmental concerns, while maintaining essential cosmic horror characteristics of alien indifference and human helplessness. The carefully detailed description of the color itself, visible yet indescribable, beautiful yet somehow wrong, capable of affecting both organic and inorganic matter in ways that violated normal natural principles, demonstrated Lovecraft's sophisticated technique of creating specific atmospheric effects through strategic deployment of precise yet ultimately inadequate description. This story established crucial precedents for cosmic horror's treatment of environmental themes, scientific investigation, and gradual revelation while providing specific imagery and concepts that would influence both literary successors and contemporary environmental horror. The Dunwich Horror, 1929, marked Lovecraft's first attempt to create a cosmic horror narrative that combined systematic mythological development with conventional horror story structure, introducing Yog-Sothoth as a major cosmic entity, while exploring themes of hybrid reproduction and dimensional transcendence through more accessible narrative techniques. The story's rural New England setting and its emphasis on local folklore and family history demonstrated how cosmic themes could be grounded in realistic regional culture while maintaining essential cosmic horror characteristics of vast temporal scales and alien intelligence. The character of Wilbur Whateley as hybrid offspring of human mother and cosmic entity enabled Lovecraft to explore biological themes of genetic contamination and evolutionary regression, while providing a specific antagonist whose motivations, though alien, remained comprehensible enough to support conventional plot development. The story's detailed exploration of the Whateley family history, including references to ancestor wizard Whateley's occult practices and the family's gradual degeneration across multiple generations, established patterns of hereditary corruption that would recur throughout subsequent mythos development, while demonstrating how cosmic influence could achieve persistence through biological rather than merely spiritual transmission. The climactic confrontation between Professor Armitage and the invisible monster that threatens to devastate the Dunwich countryside provided cosmic horror with one of its few examples of successful human resistance against cosmic forces, though this victory proved temporary and limited rather than definitively triumphant. The story's integration of academic scholarship, Armitage's consultation of forbidden texts, his translation of crucial passages, his preparation of protective formulas, with direct action against cosmic threats, established patterns that would influence subsequent collaborative mythos development, while demonstrating how cosmic horror could support more conventional adventure narratives without abandoning essential philosophical commitments. This story thus served as a crucial bridge between Lovecraft's experimental early work and the systematic mythological development that would characterize his mature period, while providing specific narrative techniques and mythological elements that would prove influential throughout subsequent cosmic horror literature. The systematic development of cosmic horror mythology through these foundational appearances established both the thematic coherence and narrative flexibility that would enable extensive collaborative expansion while maintaining essential philosophical and atmospheric characteristics across diverse authorial contributions and cultural contexts. Each story contributed crucial elements to the emerging mythos: architectural impossibility, temporal transcendence, cosmic entities, environmental contamination, hybrid reproduction, academic investigation, while demonstrating different approaches to balancing cosmic themes with conventional narrative requirements. The progression from isolated atmospheric experiments towards systematic mythological construction reflected Lovecraft's growing confidence in cosmic horror's distinctive literary potential, while establishing the technical and thematic foundations that would support both his own mature development and the extensive collaborative expansion that would follow his death, thus creating the literary framework that would enable cosmic horror to evolve from individual authorial vision into shared cultural mythology, capable of supporting diverse creative interpretations, while maintaining essential characteristics of cosmic dread and existential uncertainty that continue to resonate with contemporary audiences facing their own encounters with apparently meaningless universal forces that exceed human understanding and control, establishing the foundational literary achievements that would provide both inspiration and technical guidance for subsequent generations of cosmic horror writers, while demonstrating the remarkable creative potential inherent in systematic exploration of humanity's cosmic insignificance through rigorous literary craft and philosophical sophistication. At the Mountains of Madness, in 1936, represents Lovecraft's most ambitious attempt to synthesize cosmic horror themes with rigorous scientific methodology, creating a narrative that functions simultaneously as adventure story, scientific expedition report, and comprehensive mythological exposition, while maintaining the essential atmospheric and philosophical characteristics that define cosmic horror as a distinctive literary mode. The novella's frame narrative, presented as Professor William Dyer's reluctant testimony intended to dissuade future Antarctic exploration, establishes the scholarly credibility and institutional authority necessary for cosmic horror's pseudo-documentary effects, while emphasizing themes of protective censorship and dangerous knowledge that pervade Lovecraft's mature work. Dyer's position as a respected geologist at Miskatonic University provides both the scientific expertise required for credible archaeological speculation and the academic responsibility that motivates his eventual decision to reveal cosmic truths that threaten human understanding and safety. The opening passages establish the expedition's legitimate scientific purposes: geological survey, fossil collection, ice core analysis, while subtly introducing atmospheric elements that suggest vast temporal scales and hidden historical complexities beneath Antarctica's apparently lifeless ice sheets. The narrative technique of retrospective revelation, with Dyer systematically building evidence for impossible conclusions while acknowledging his own reluctance to accept such realities, demonstrates Lovecraft's sophisticated understanding of how unreliable narration can enhance rather than undermine documentary authenticity. Consider carefully how this opening framework establishes the essential tension between scientific rationalism and cosmic revelation that drives the entire narrative while providing the institutional and intellectual contexts necessary for cosmic horror's distinctive treatment of forbidden knowledge and academic responsibility. The discovery of the ancient city represents the novella's central set piece, demonstrating Lovecraft's masterful deployment of architectural description to suggest cosmic alienness while maintaining sufficient specificity to create vivid atmospheric effects and support extended narrative development. The explorer's initial approach to the mountain range reveals structures of impossible antiquity and scale, with Dyer noting that the carvings on the black stone showed a mathematical sublimity which fairly stunned us, suggesting architectural principles that transcend normal human aesthetic and engineering capabilities, while maintaining enough recognizable elements to enable detailed description and investigation. The systematic exploration of the city's interior spaces provides Lovecraft with opportunities to develop his distinctive technique of non-Euclidean geometry, describing corridors and chambers whose dimensions appear to shift according to viewing angle while following logical principles that human consciousness cannot fully comprehend. The bas-relief carvings that chronicle the Elder Thing's history enable the narrative to achieve comprehensive mythological exposition while maintaining the archaeological framework that grounds fantastic elements in plausible scientific contexts, revealing a civilization that spanned millions of years while maintaining detailed records of their biological experiments, cosmic contacts, and eventual decline. The technique of historical reconstruction through archaeological evidence demonstrates how cosmic horror can achieve both vast temporal scope and specific historical detail while preserving essential mystery about ultimate cosmic forces and their relationship to terrestrial development. The city's preservation across geological time periods suggests technologies and materials that exceed human understanding while providing concrete imagery for abstract concepts of temporal transcendence and alien intelligence. This central discovery sequence establishes the narrative framework that enables systematic revelation of cosmic history while maintaining the atmospheric intensity and intellectual credibility that distinguish cosmic horror from conventional supernatural fiction. The revelation of the Elder Thing's biological nature and cultural achievements demonstrates Lovecraft's sophisticated approach to creating alien intelligence that remains comprehensible enough to support extended narrative development, while maintaining essential cosmic horror characteristics of fundamental alienness and temporal transcendence. The detailed descriptions of Elder Thing physiology, barrel-shaped torsos, starfish-like appendages, and crinoid-like head structures combine specific biological detail with systematic emphasis on non-human characteristics that suggest evolutionary development entirely independent of terrestrial life, while maintaining enough functional logic to support credible speculation about their capabilities and cultural development. The archaeological evidence of their scientific achievements, biological experimentation that created terrestrial life forms, architectural projects that spanned continents, cosmic, communication systems that enabled contact with other dimensions, establishes them as genuinely advanced civilization rather than mere monsters, while emphasizing their fundamental differences from human cultural patterns and ethical systems. The historical narrative revealed through bas-relief interpretation chronicles their gradual decline from cosmic awareness to terrestrial limitation, suggesting that even advanced alien intelligence remains subject to historical cycles of development and decay that render all achievements ultimately temporary. The technique enables Lovecraft to explore themes of evolutionary limitation and historical impermanence, while creating specific alien culture that supports extended narrative development without sacrificing essential cosmic horror characteristics of temporal transcendence and existential uncertainty. The Elder Things' relationship with their created Shoggoths, initially obedient servants that eventually developed independent intelligence and rebelled against their creators, provides cosmic horror with one of its most effective explorations of the theme that intelligence itself may prove uncontrollable once it achieves sufficient development. That consciousness represents a cosmic force that exceeds the intentions of its creators. This biological and cultural development establishes the mythological framework that enables the narrative's climactic revelations, while demonstrating how cosmic horror can achieve systematic world-building without abandoning essential philosophical commitments to cosmic insignificance and existential dread. The encounter with living Shoggoths represents the novella's most intense horror sequence, demonstrating Lovecraft's technique of combining specific physical description with systematic emphasis on incomprehensibility to create entities that generate sustained terror while serving essential narrative and philosophical functions within the broader cosmic horror framework. The first indirect evidence of Shoggoth presence, the hellish slime coating found in disturbed areas of the ancient city, establishes atmospheric dread through suggestion and implication, while providing clues that enable careful readers to anticipate subsequent developments without diminishing their ultimate impact. The famous description of the Shoggoth itself combines specific visual detail with systematic emphasis on impossible characteristics. A shapeless congeries of protoplasmic bubbles, faintly self-luminous, and with myriads of temporary eyes forming and unforming as pustules of greenish light all over the tunnel-filling front that bore down upon us, crushing the frantic penguins and slithering over the glistening floor that it and its kind had swept so evilly free of all litter. This passage demonstrates Lovecraft's sophisticated technique of creating memorable horror imagery through precise description of impossible phenomena while maintaining essential mystery about the entity's ultimate nature and capabilities. The Shoggoth's ability to mimic human speech, tekeli-li, while lacking genuine intelligence or communicative intent, provides cosmic horror with effective exploration of the theme that consciousness and communication represent fundamentally different phenomena, that apparent intelligence may mask alien processes that bear no relationship to human psychological or social development. The creature's systematic destruction of archaeological evidence suggests both accidental consequence of its presence and deliberate effort to conceal cosmic history from human investigation, enabling the narrative to explore themes of protective ignorance and dangerous knowledge while providing practical explanations for the absence of physical evidence that might support cosmic horror's fantastic claims. This encounter sequence demonstrates how cosmic horror can achieve immediate visceral effects while maintaining essential philosophical sophistication and mythological coherence. The narrative's treatment of madness and psychological breakdown reflects Lovecraft's mature understanding of how cosmic revelation affects human consciousness, demonstrating techniques for portraying mental deterioration that serve both realistic characterization and essential thematic functions within cosmic horror's philosophical framework. Danforth's psychological collapse following the expedition's final discoveries provides the narrative with effective exploration of epistemological themes, while maintaining essential ambiguity about the ultimate reality of cosmic revelations, as his incoherent references to impossible geometries and cosmic entities could represent either accurate testimony or complete mental breakdown. Dyer's own gradual recognition of his psychological vulnerability, his increasing reluctance to investigate certain areas of the ancient city, his growing awareness that complete knowledge might prove psychologically destructive, enables the narrative to explore themes of intellectual limitation and protective ignorance while maintaining the scholarly credibility necessary for cosmic horror's documentary effects. The technique of partial revelation, with crucial information withheld either through narrative discretion or character breakdown, preserves essential mystery while providing sufficient detail to create comprehensive atmospheric and mythological effects. The emphasis on institutional responsibility, Dyer's recognition that full revelation might inspire dangerous future expeditions, demonstrates how cosmic horror can explore themes of social and cultural protection while maintaining essential philosophical commitments to the dangerous nature of cosmic knowledge. The psychological dimension thus serves both immediate narrative requirements and broader thematic exploration, creating effects that persist beyond specific plot developments while establishing patterns of mental response that continue to characterize cosmic horror's treatment of consciousness confronting cosmic reality. The novella's position within Lovecraft's broader mythological development demonstrates how At the Mountains of Madness functions both as comprehensive exposition of cosmic history and as specific exploration of themes that connect to other major works while maintaining its essential identity as complete narrative rather than mere mythological fragment. The references to the Necronomicon and other forbidden texts establish continuity with earlier stories while providing institutional frameworks for managing dangerous knowledge across multiple narratives and collaborative expansions. The connections to the Call of Cthulhu, particularly the revelation that the Elder Things engaged in warfare with Cthulhu's star spawn, create impression of vast cosmic conflicts that extend far beyond immediate narrative scope, while providing specific historical contexts for understanding the relationship between different cosmic entities and their terrestrial influences. The story's scientific methodology and institutional credibility enable it to serve as foundational text for subsequent mythos development while maintaining essential atmospheric and philosophical characteristics that distinguish cosmic horror from conventional science fiction or fantasy literature. The comprehensive scope of its mythological exposition, covering millions of years of terrestrial history, multiple alien civilizations, and cosmic conflicts that dwarf human historical experience, establishes it as crucial reference point for understanding cosmic horror's systematic approach to world building, while demonstrating how individual narratives can achieve both complete artistic success and essential mythological functions within broader collaborative frameworks, thus establishing At the Mountains of Madness as both artistic achievement and mythological foundation that continues to influence contemporary cosmic horror while providing specific techniques and thematic approaches that demonstrate cosmic horror's distinctive literary potential and philosophical sophistication. The Shadow Out of Time, 1936, represents Lovecraft's most sophisticated exploration of consciousness, identity, and temporal transcendence, creating a narrative framework that enables systematic investigation of cosmic horror's most abstract philosophical themes while maintaining the scholarly credibility and atmospheric intensity that characterize his mature literary technique. The story's protagonist, Nathaniel Wingate Peaslee, occupies a unique position within Lovecraft's fiction as both victim of cosmic influence and scholarly investigator of his own impossible experiences, enabling the narrative to achieve unprecedented psychological depth while exploring themes of mental displacement and temporal consciousness that exceed normal human understanding. Peaslee's initial amnesia episode, 5 years during which his personality apparently disappeared while his body continued functioning under alien control, establishes the central mystery that drives both character development and philosophical investigation, creating a framework that enables cosmic horror to explore fundamental questions about the nature of consciousness, personal identity, and temporal continuity. The narrative technique of scholarly reconstruction, with Peaslee methodically documenting evidence for his impossible memories of existence in alien bodies across vast temporal periods, demonstrates Lovecraft's sophisticated understanding of how pseudo-academic methodology can enhance supernatural elements while maintaining essential ambiguity about ultimate reality. The opening passages establish both Peaslee's academic credentials as professor of political economy at Miskatonic University and his systematic approach to investigating phenomena that challenge fundamental assumptions about consciousness and time, creating the intellectual framework necessary for cosmic horror's distinctive treatment of epistemological themes. Consider carefully how this narrative structure enables systematic exploration of identity and consciousness while maintaining the essential mystery and atmospheric intensity that distinguish cosmic horror from conventional psychological or science fiction. The revelation of the great race of Yith introduces cosmic horror's most comprehensive exploration of consciousness as transferable phenomenon that transcends normal biological and temporal limitations, establishing alien intelligence that operates according to principles fundamentally different from human psychological development, while remaining comprehensible enough to support extended narrative investigation. Peaslee's recovered memories of existence within Yithian bodies reveal a civilization that achieved temporal transcendence through systematic consciousness transfer, occupying successive species across geological time periods, while maintaining cultural continuity and accumulated knowledge that spans millions of years of cosmic development. The detailed descriptions of Yithian society, their cone-shaped bodies with retractable appendages, their vast library cities containing knowledge from across the universe, their systematic practice of mental exchange with beings from different time periods, create specific alien culture that maintains essential cosmic horror characteristics of temporal transcendence and incomprehensible intelligence, while providing concrete imagery for abstract philosophical concepts. The Yithians' relationship with captured human consciousness demonstrates cosmic horror's distinctive treatment of identity as fluid rather than fixed phenomenon, suggesting that selfhood may prove less stable than normally assumed when subjected to cosmic rather than terrestrial conditions. The technique enables Lovecraft to explore themes of psychological displacement and temporal consciousness while maintaining the scholarly framework that grounds fantastic elements in plausible investigative methodology. The great race's systematic documentation of cosmic history, their records of civilizations that flourished across temporal periods exceeding human historical understanding, their knowledge of cosmic entities and dimensional relationships that govern universal development, establishes them as comprehensive source of cosmic knowledge while emphasizing their fundamental alienness and indifference to human concerns. This alien civilization thus serves both specific narrative functions and broader mythological purposes, providing cosmic horror with its most detailed exploration of alternative consciousness while demonstrating how alien intelligence might operate, according to principles that transcend normal biological and temporal limitations. The archaeological expedition to Australia's Great Sandy Desert provides the narrative with its most intense sequence of cosmic horror revelation, demonstrating Lovecraft's masterful technique of combining rigorous scientific methodology with systematic atmospheric development to create scenes that function simultaneously as adventure narrative and philosophical investigation. Peaslee's decision to investigate the physical location of his impossible memories establishes the essential tension between scholarly skepticism and personal conviction that drives cosmic horror's most effective narratives, as his academic training demands empirical verification, while his recovered memories suggest realities that exceed normal evidential standards. The discovery of the ancient Yithian city, buried beneath millennia of geological deposits yet preserved with impossible completeness, provides cosmic horror with one of its most detailed explorations of archaeological impossibility, while maintaining sufficient scientific credibility to support extended investigation and atmospheric development. The systematic exploration of the city's interior spaces, vast libraries containing knowledge from across the universe, laboratories equipped with incomprehensible scientific instruments, chambers designed for consciousness transfer procedures, enables Lovecraft to create specific imagery for abstract concepts while maintaining essential mystery about ultimate cosmic principles. The famous description of the Yithian archives demonstrates the author's technique of suggesting vast intellectual scope while preserving essential incomprehensibility. In these hybrid Yithian machines were great stores of books, as well as apparatus which I seem to know how to operate. A complex battery of boxes, mirror machines, and metal fixtures designed for the purpose of thought exchange. This passage combines specific physical detail with systematic emphasis on alien functionality, creating memorable atmospheric effects, while exploring themes of knowledge, transmission, and consciousness manipulation that exceed normal human understanding. The archaeological framework enables the narrative to achieve both immediate visceral impact and sustained philosophical investigation, while maintaining the essential credibility that distinguishes cosmic horror from conventional supernatural fiction. The encounter with living specimens provides the story's climactic horror sequence, while serving essential narrative and philosophical functions within cosmic horror's systematic exploration of consciousness, identity, and temporal transcendence. The discovery that some Yithians survived their civilization's decline by transferring into human bodies creates profound ambiguity about the relationship between individual identity and cosmic awareness, suggesting that apparent human consciousness may sometimes mask alien intelligence operating according to incomprehensible principles and motivations. Peasley's recognition that certain contemporary individuals may be displaced, Yithians occupying human bodies, transforms cosmic horror's typical emphasis on external threats into more fundamental challenge to assumptions about identity, consciousness, and social reality, suggesting that the boundaries between human and alien awareness may prove less stable than normally assumed. The technique demonstrates cosmic horror's distinctive capacity for generating sustained psychological unease through philosophical implication rather than immediate physical threat, creating effects that persist beyond narrative conclusion while challenging readers' fundamental assumptions about consciousness and identity. The final revelation that Peasley's own consciousness may have been permanently altered by his temporal displacement provides the narrative with its most disturbing implication, suggesting that cosmic contact leaves lasting changes that render normal human existence impossible to restore completely. The ambiguous conclusion, with Peasley uncertain whether his recovered memories represent genuine experience or elaborate delusion, maintains essential mystery while providing sufficient evidence to support either interpretation, demonstrating cosmic horror's sophisticated technique of preserving ambiguity while creating comprehensive atmospheric and philosophical effects. This climactic sequence thus achieves both immediate narrative resolution and ongoing existential uncertainty, establishing patterns of consciousness displacement and identity confusion that continue to characterize contemporary cosmic horror while reflecting persistent human anxieties about the stability of selfhood and the reliability of memory and perception. The story's treatment of time and temporal consciousness represents Lovecraft's most sophisticated exploration of cosmic horror's distinctive approach to temporal themes, demonstrating how vast timescales and alternative temporal relationships can generate sustained existential anxiety while supporting specific narrative development and atmospheric enhancement. Peasley's recovered memories of existence across geological time periods, his consciousness experiencing life in Yithian bodies during the Permian period, his awareness of cosmic events that preceded human evolution by millions of years, transform normal historical consciousness into recognition of humanity's recent emergence and probable insignificance within cosmic development. The technique of temporal displacement enables cosmic horror to explore themes of historical humility and existential uncertainty while providing specific imagery for abstract philosophical concepts about consciousness, identity, and temporal continuity. The Yithians' systematic practice of consciousness exchange across different time periods suggests that temporal boundaries may prove less absolute than normally assumed. that awareness itself might transcend normal biological and historical limitations when subjected to cosmic rather than terrestrial conditions. The narrative's emphasis on the relationship between memory and identity. Peaslee struggled to distinguish between genuine recovered memories and possible delusions. His recognition that temporal displacement has permanently altered his psychological relationship to normal human existence demonstrates how cosmic horror can explore fundamental philosophical questions about consciousness and selfhood while maintaining essential atmospheric and narrative effectiveness. The temporal dimension thus serves both specific story requirements and broader thematic exploration, creating effects that extend beyond immediate narrative circumstances while establishing cosmic horror's distinctive treatment of time as source of existential anxiety rather than simple chronological framework. This temporal sophistication enables the narrative to achieve both comprehensive cosmic scope and detailed psychological investigation while maintaining essential mystery about ultimate cosmic principles and their relationship to human consciousness and historical development. The story's position within Lovecraft's broader mythological framework demonstrates how The Shadow Out of Time functions both as complete artistic achievement and as essential component of cosmic horror's systematic world-building, establishing connections to other major works while maintaining its distinctive focus on consciousness, identity, and temporal transcendence. The references to other cosmic entities, particularly the flying polyps that destroyed Yithian civilization, and the relationship between different alien species across cosmic history, create impression of vast interconnected conflicts and developments that extend far beyond immediate narrative scope, while providing specific historical contexts for understanding cosmic horror's comprehensive mythological vision. The story's scientific methodology and institutional credibility enable it to serve as foundational text for understanding cosmic horror's approach to consciousness and temporal themes while maintaining essential, atmospheric and philosophical characteristics that distinguish the genre from conventional science fiction or fantasy literature. The comprehensive scope of its temporal investigation, covering millions of years of cosmic development, multiple alien civilizations, and consciousness transfer procedures that transcend normal biological limitations, establishes it as a crucial reference point for subsequent mythos development, while demonstrating how individual narratives can achieve both complete artistic success and essential mythological functions within broader collaborative frameworks, thus establishing The Shadow Out of Time as both sophisticated philosophical exploration and foundational mythological text that continues to influence contemporary cosmic horror while providing specific techniques and thematic approaches that demonstrate the genre's distinctive capacity for combining rigorous intellectual investigation with sustained atmospheric intensity and existential anxiety that reflects persistent human concerns about consciousness, identity, and temporal significance within an apparently indifferent cosmos that operates according to principles that exceed human understanding and control. The posthumous development of Lovecraft's cosmic horror mythology through collaborative expansion represents one of the most remarkable examples of literary world-building in 20th century fiction, as subsequent writers transformed an individual author's scattered references and atmospheric suggestions into a comprehensive mythological system that continues to evolve across multiple media platforms and cultural contexts. The initial phase of this collaborative development occurred during Lovecraft's lifetime through his extensive correspondence with fellow writers like Clark Ashton Smith, Robert E. Howard, and Frank Belknap Long, who began incorporating each other's fictional creations into their own stories during the late 1920s and early 1930s. This informal sharing of mythological elements established crucial precedents for collaborative world-building, while demonstrating that Lovecraft's cosmic entities possess sufficient ambiguity and scope to support multiple interpretations and elaborations, without losing their essential characteristics of cosmic dread and existential uncertainty. Howard's inclusion of references to the Necronomicon and Cthulhu in his own weird tales, combined with Smith's contributions of the Book of Ibon and various cosmic deities that Lovecraft subsequently adopted, created an impression of scholarly authenticity that enhanced supernatural elements while expanding the mythos beyond any single author's imagination. The collaborative spirit of this early period reflected both practical considerations, writers sharing resources and inspiration during the pulp magazine era, and deeper philosophical alignments about the nature of cosmic horror itself, establishing the mythos as fundamentally expansive rather than closed, open to interpretation and elaboration rather than fixed in definitive form. Consider carefully how this collaborative approach distinguished cosmic horror from more proprietary fictional universes, while creating the foundation for extensive posthumous development that would transform Lovecraft's individual vision into shared cultural mythology, capable of supporting diverse creative interpretations across multiple generations of writers and artists. August Derleth's systematic preservation and expansion of Lovecraft's literary legacy through Arkham House Publications represents both the most significant and most controversial aspect of early mythos development, as his editorial and creative contributions fundamentally altered the character of cosmic horror while ensuring its survival and broader cultural dissemination. Following Lovecraft's death in 1937, Derleth assumed responsibility for collecting and publishing his mentor's scattered works, founding Arkham House specifically to preserve materials that might otherwise have vanished into pulp magazine obscurity, while establishing the institutional framework necessary for sustained mythos development. However, Derleth's contributions extended far beyond mere preservation, as he imposed organizational structures and thematic interpretations that significantly transformed the philosophical character of Lovecraft's original vision, most notably through his division of cosmic entities into opposing forces of good and evil, represented by the elder gods versus the great old ones. This theological framework, while making the mythos more accessible to popular audiences familiar with conventional supernatural fiction, represented a fundamental misunderstanding of Lovecraft's materialist philosophy, which had consistently portrayed cosmic entities as amoral rather than actively malevolent, operating according to principles entirely divorced from human ethical categories. Derleth's systematization efforts also included the creation of detailed genealogies, power hierarchies, and geographical distributions for cosmic entities, transforming Lovecraft's deliberately ambiguous atmospheric suggestions into comprehensive reference materials that subsequent writers could consult for consistency. The publication of collections like The Outsider and Others, 1939, and Beyond the Wall of Sleep, 1943, established Lovecraft's reputation among broader literary audiences, while providing the textual foundation for ongoing mythos development. Though Derleth's editorial decisions and supplementary materials often reflected his own theological interpretations, rather than Lovecraft's original philosophical commitments. This systematic approach to mythos organization, however philosophically problematic, provided the structural foundation that enabled cosmic horror to survive and flourish throughout the mid-20th century, while establishing patterns of collaborative development that would influence subsequent generations of writers and editors. The emergence of sophisticated literary approaches to cosmic horror during the 1960s and 1970s through writers like Ramsey Campbell, Brian Lumley, and Colin Wilson demonstrated how the mythos could support serious artistic ambitions while adapting to contemporary cultural concerns and philosophical developments. Campbell's early mythos stories, particularly those collected in The Inhabitant of the Lake and Less Welcome Tenants, 1964, revealed how cosmic horror themes could be successfully transplanted from Lovecraft's New England settings to entirely different geographical and cultural contexts. In Campbell's case, the industrial landscapes of northern England with their own distinctive atmospheric and social characteristics. His technique of maintaining essential cosmic horror elements, ancient entities, forbidden knowledge, academic investigation, psychological breakdown, while adapting them to contemporary urban environments, demonstrated the mythos's remarkable flexibility and cultural adaptability, establishing precedents for international expansion that would prove crucial to its global development. Lumley's Titus Crow series, beginning with The Burrowers Beneath, 1974, explored the implications of humans gaining access to cosmic knowledge and power, pushing the mythos towards science fiction rather than pure horror while introducing heroic protagonists capable of meaningful resistance against cosmic forces, a development that diverge significantly from Lovecraft's fundamental commitment to human insignificance and helplessness. Wilson's philosophical approach, particularly in novels like The Mind Parasites, 1967, and The Space Vampires, 1976, attempted to reconcile Lovecraftian themes with contemporary psychological and paranormal theories, creating hybrid narratives that maintain cosmic scope while offering more optimistic possibilities for human evolution and consciousness expansion. These diverse approaches revealed the mythos's capacity to support radically different interpretive frameworks while maintaining its essential character as literature of cosmic dread, establishing patterns of creative adaptation that would continue to characterize subsequent mythos development, while demonstrating how collaborative expansion could enhance rather than diminish the original vision's philosophical sophistication and atmospheric effectiveness. The academic recognition of Lovecraft's literary significance during the 1970s and 1980s coincided with increasingly sophisticated approaches to mythos development, as writers like T.E.D. Klein, Thomas Ligotti, and later Caitlin R. Kiernan brought scholarly awareness and literary sophistication to cosmic horror themes while maintaining essential philosophical commitments to existential dread and cosmic insignificance. Klein's novella, The Ceremonies, 1984, demonstrated how mythos elements could be integrated into psychologically complex narratives that achieved greater characterization and emotional depth than many of Lovecraft's original stories, while preserving the essential philosophical framework of cosmic horror, particularly its emphasis on human insignificance and the dangerous nature of cosmic knowledge. Ligotti's contributions, collected in volumes like Songs of a Dead Dreamer, 1985, and Grim Scribe, 1991, pushed cosmic horror toward even bleaker territories than Lovecraft had explored, investigating themes of cosmic puppetry and existential meaninglessness that made the original vision seem almost optimistic by comparison, while maintaining rigorous literary standards and philosophical sophistication. His philosophical approach, influenced by pessimistic thinkers like Arthur Schopenhauer and Thomas Bernhard, created narratives that explored the possibility that consciousness itself might be a cosmic mistake, that awareness represents a form of suffering that the universe would prefer to eliminate entirely. Kiernan's paleontological background enabled her to ground cosmic horror in genuine scientific speculation about evolutionary development and geological timescales, creating narratives that achieved Lovecraft's goal of scientifically plausible weird fiction more successfully than many of his own stories, while maintaining essential atmospheric and philosophical characteristics. This period witnessed the emergence of what might be called literary cosmic horror, distinguished from earlier pulp adventure narratives through its commitment to serious artistic and philosophical exploration, while maintaining the essential elements that defined cosmic horror as a distinctive literary mode rather than mere subgenre of supernatural fiction. The digital age has witnessed an unprecedented explosion of mythos-related creativity across multiple media platforms. As online communities, gaming systems, and multimedia adaptations have introduced Lovecraftian themes to audiences far beyond traditional literary readership, while creating new possibilities for collaborative development and cultural dissemination. The development of the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game by Chaosium in 1981 proved particularly significant in establishing systematic rules for exploring cosmic horror themes interactively, while creating canonical interpretations of mythos, elements that influence subsequent literary development, demonstrating how gaming platforms could serve both as entertainment medium and as collaborative world-building tool. Video games like Call of Cthulhu, Dark Corners of the Earth, 2005, and The Sinking City, 2019, have created immersive environments for experiencing cosmic horror, while introducing visual and interactive elements that complement rather than replace literary exploration, establishing multimedia approaches that expand rather than diminish the mythos's cultural influence. Online fiction platforms like the SCP Foundation have demonstrated how internet communities can create collaborative mythologies that draw upon Lovecraftian principles while developing entirely new approaches to cosmic horror themes. particularly the concept of anomalous objects and entities that require institutional containment rather than individual investigation. Contemporary writers like Laird Barron, Philip Fracassi, and Matthew M. Bartlett have emerged from this digital ecosystem to produce professionally published works that maintain high literary standards while exploring new possibilities within cosmic horror frameworks, demonstrating how collaborative expansion continues to generate innovative approaches to essential themes of cosmic dread and existential uncertainty. This contemporary development phase reveals how the mythos has evolved from Lovecraft's individual vision through systematic organization, literary sophistication, and digital democratization to its current status as shared cultural mythology accessible to creators and audiences across multiple media platforms, while maintaining essential philosophical and atmospheric characteristics that continue to resonate with contemporary concerns about human significance, cosmic reality, and the psychological costs of knowledge within an apparently indifferent universe that operates according to principles that exceed human understanding and control, thus establishing collaborative expansion as both creative method and cultural phenomenon that demonstrates the remarkable adaptability and enduring relevance of cosmic horror themes across diverse contexts and media platforms. The persistent belief in the actual existence of Lovecraft's fictional creations represents one of the most fascinating examples of literary hoaxing in modern culture, revealing how effectively constructed pseudo-scholarly frameworks can blur the boundaries between fiction and reality while creating cultural phenomena that transcend their original artistic purposes. The most famous example of this literary deception involves the Necronomicon, which Lovecraft explicitly created as fictional text, yet which continues to generate elaborate hoaxes, fraudulent publications, and sincere inquiries from readers convinced of its historical authenticity nearly a century after its first appearance in The Hound, 1924. Despite Lovecraft's repeated clarifications in his correspondence that the Necronomicon was entirely fictional, he even provided detailed explanations of how he constructed the title from Greek roots meaning image of the law of the dead. Countless individuals have attempted to create real versions of the forbidden text, ranging from obvious commercial exploitation to sophisticated scholarly forgeries that demonstrate remarkable dedication to maintaining the illusion of authenticity. The phenomenon reflects both the effectiveness of Lovecraft's pseudo-documentary techniques and deeper cultural needs for mysterious knowledge that transcends conventional religious and scientific frameworks, suggesting that fictional mythologies may serve psychological and social functions that historical mythologies once provided for earlier cultural periods. Consider carefully how these hoaxes reveal not merely gullibility or commercial opportunism, but genuine hunger for cosmic meaning and forbidden knowledge that contemporary culture struggles to satisfy through traditional intellectual and spiritual resources. Creating space for fictional mythologies to achieve cultural influence that exceeds their original artistic intentions, while raising fundamental questions about the relationship between literary creation and cultural belief systems. The commercial exploitation of Lovecraftian elements through fraudulent publications demonstrates how fictional mythologies can generate economic opportunities, while revealing the extent to which audiences desire authentic engagement with cosmic horror themes rather than simple entertainment consumption. The most notorious example involves the various authentic Necronomicons published since the 1970s, beginning with the Simon Necronomicon, 1977, which combined Lovecraftian imagery with genuine Mesopotamian mythology to create a text that many readers accepted as historically legitimate, despite its obvious fictional origins and commercial motivations. This publication's remarkable success, selling hundreds of thousands of copies and inspiring numerous ritual practices among readers who treated it as genuine occult manual, reveals how effectively constructed hoaxes can satisfy cultural desires for mysterious knowledge while demonstrating the economic potential inherent in well-developed fictional mythologies. Subsequent publications like the Hey Necronomicon and various online versions have continued this tradition of commercial exploitation, while often improving upon the original hoax's sophistication, incorporating genuine historical research and scholarly apparatus to enhance their claims of authenticity. The phenomenon extends beyond simple book publishing to include websites, documentaries, and academic conferences that maintain elaborate pretenses of investigating real Lovecraftian phenomena, creating entire industries devoted to perpetuating fictional narratives as historical realities. These commercial enterprises reveal both the remarkable cultural penetration of cosmic horror themes and the extent to which contemporary audiences hunger for engagement with mysterious knowledge that transcends conventional educational and entertainment categories, suggesting that Lovecraft's fictional creations have achieved cultural status comparable to traditional mythological systems, while generating economic opportunities that demonstrate their continued relevance and appeal across diverse demographic and cultural contexts. The phenomenon of reality creep surrounding Lovecraftian elements reveals how fictional constructs can gradually achieve quasi-historical status through repetition, cross-referencing, and cultural osmosis, creating situations where the boundaries between literary creation and historical fact become increasingly difficult to maintain or identify. This process operates through multiple mechanisms: casual references in popular media that fail to identify Lovecraftian elements as fictional, scholarly discussions that treat fictional texts as historical curiosities, and internet communities that deliberately blur distinctions between fiction and reality for entertainment or ideological purposes. The result creates cultural environments where individuals encountering Lovecraftian references may reasonably assume they refer to historical rather than fictional phenomena, particularly when such references appear in contexts that normally maintain clear distinctions between fact and fiction. Academic conferences on forbidden archaeology and alternative history frequently include presentations on Lovecraftian themes presented as serious historical investigation, while popular documentaries and television programs often reference cosmic horror elements without adequate fictional disclaimers, contributing to cultural confusion about their historical status. The internet has accelerated this process exponentially, as websites, forums, and social media platforms enable rapid dissemination of Lovecraftian content without consistent identification of its fictional origins, creating information's environments where fictional and historical materials achieve equivalent cultural authority through simple repetition and cross-referencing. This reality creep demonstrates how effectively constructed fictional mythologies can achieve cultural penetration that exceeds their creators' intentions, while revealing contemporary culture's apparent difficulties in maintaining clear distinctions between literary creation and historical documentation, particularly when fictional materials satisfy psychological and intellectual needs that conventional historical narratives fail to address adequately. The psychological appeal of real Lovecraftian phenomena reflects deeper cultural anxieties about the adequacy of conventional knowledge systems for addressing contemporary existential concerns, particularly the growing recognition that scientific and religious frameworks may prove insufficient for comprehending the universe's apparent vastness and indifference to human concerns. Audiences who seek authentic versions of the Necronomicon or investigate real cosmic horror phenomena often express dissatisfaction with mainstream intellectual and spiritual resources, suggesting that Lovecraft's fictional mythology addresses psychological needs that conventional cultural institutions struggle to satisfy effectively. The appeal of forbidden knowledge, information that mainstream academia allegedly suppresses or ignores, provides individuals with opportunities to feel intellectually superior to conventional authorities while engaging with cosmic themes that acknowledge rather than minimize human insignificance and existential uncertainty. This psychological dynamic enables Lovecraftian hoaxes to function as alternative religious or philosophical systems that offer cosmic meaning without requiring traditional religious commitment, creating space for individuals to explore existential themes through fictional frameworks that feel more authentic than conventional cultural offerings. The phenomenon also reflects contemporary skepticism toward institutional authority and mainstream media, as individuals who embrace Lovecraftian hoaxes often express broader distrust of official knowledge systems, while seeking alternative sources of cosmic understanding that acknowledge rather than dismiss their fears about humanity's cosmic insignificance. The psychological appeal thus extends beyond simple entertainment consumption to include genuine spiritual and intellectual seeking, suggesting that cosmic horror themes address persistent human concerns about meaning, knowledge, and cosmic significance that contemporary culture struggles to address through traditional intellectual and religious resources. The internet age has transformed Lovecraftian hoaxing from occasional commercial exploitation into systematic cultural phenomenon, as online communities have developed increasingly sophisticated methods for creating and maintaining fictional narratives that blur boundaries between literary creation and historical documentation. Websites like the Miskatonic University archives and various Cthulhu cult forums maintain elaborate pretenses of documenting real cosmic horror phenomena while creating collaborative fictional environments that enable participants to engage with Lovecraftian themes through role-playing and creative writing, disguised as historical investigation. These online communities often develop internal mythologies that extend far beyond Lovecraft's original creations, while maintaining sufficient connection to cosmic horror themes to preserve essential atmospheric and philosophical characteristics, creating collaborative fictional environments that serve both entertainment and psychological functions for participants seeking engagement with cosmic meaning and forbidden knowledge. The SCP Foundation represents perhaps the most sophisticated example of this phenomenon, creating collaborative mythology based on cosmic horror principles, while maintaining clear fictional frameworks that prevent confusion with historical claims, demonstrating how online communities can satisfy cultural desires for mysterious knowledge while avoiding the ethical problems associated with deliberate deception. Social media platforms have further accelerated this process by enabling rapid dissemination of Lovecraftian content across diverse audiences, while making it increasingly difficult to maintain clear distinctions between fictional creation and historical documentation, particularly when such content satisfies psychological needs that conventional cultural resources fail to address adequately. The digital transformation thus reveals how fictional mythologies can achieve cultural influence that transcends their original artistic purposes while creating new possibilities for collaborative creation and cultural participation that may represent evolutionary developments in how human communities create and maintain meaning systems. The cultural implications of Lovecraftian hoaxing extend beyond immediate questions of literary fraud or commercial exploitation to fundamental concerns about the relationship between fictional creation and cultural belief systems in an era when traditional religious and philosophical frameworks appear increasingly inadequate for addressing contemporary existential concerns. The persistence of these hoaxes, despite clear evidence of their fictional origins, suggests that significant portions of contemporary culture hunger for engagement with cosmic meaning and forbidden knowledge that conventional intellectual and spiritual resources fail to provide. Creating cultural spaces where fictional mythologies can achieve quasi-religious authority through psychological necessity rather than historical authenticity. This phenomenon raises profound questions about the nature of cultural truth and the relationship between literary creation and social meaning, particularly whether fictional constructs that address genuine psychological and spiritual needs should be evaluated according to historical accuracy or cultural effectiveness in providing existential resources for individuals and communities struggling with cosmic insignificance and existential uncertainty. The implications suggest that Lovecraft's cosmic horror, rather than remaining confined to literary entertainment, has evolved into cultural mythology that serves genuine social and psychological functions, comparable to traditional religious systems, while maintaining sufficient flexibility to adapt to contemporary concerns and technological possibilities, establishing patterns of cultural development that may represent significant evolutionary changes in how human communities create and maintain meaning systems within apparently indifferent cosmic contexts that exceed traditional frameworks for understanding human significance and cosmic purpose, thus revealing cosmic horror's transformation from individual artistic vision into shared cultural resource that continues to address persistent human concerns about knowledge, meaning, and cosmic significance in ways that demonstrate remarkable adaptability and enduring relevance across diverse cultural contexts and technological platforms. The translation of cosmic horror from literary medium into visual and popular culture represents one of the most challenging adaptations in entertainment history, as the genre's essential reliance on suggestion, implication, and psychological atmosphere directly conflicts with visual media's tendency toward explicit representation and immediate sensory impact. The fundamental problem facing filmmakers and other visual artists attempting to adapt Lovecraftian themes lies in cosmic horror's philosophical commitment to the unknowable and indescribable, characteristics that resist visualization without losing their essential mystery and atmospheric effectiveness. Early film adaptations like The Haunted Palace, 1963, and The Dunwich Horror, 1970, demonstrated both the potential and limitations of cinematic cosmic horror, achieving atmospheric success through gothic imagery and psychological tension, while struggling to convey the vast temporal scales and philosophical implications that distinguish cosmic horror from conventional supernatural fiction. These pioneering efforts establish patterns that continue to influence contemporary adaptations: emphasis on rural New England settings, academic protagonists investigating mysterious phenomena, and climactic revelations that suggest, rather than explicitly depict, cosmic entities and their influence on human consciousness. The challenge of visualizing the invisible became central to cosmic horror's cinematic development, as directors discovered that direct representation of cosmic entities often diminished their terrifying impact, while indirect suggestion through lighting, sound design, and psychological performance could achieve effects comparable to literary techniques of implication and ambiguity. Consider carefully how visual media's inherent limitations paradoxically enabled innovative approaches to cosmic horror themes, while revealing new possibilities for atmospheric development that complemented rather than replaced literary techniques, creating multimedia approaches that expanded rather than diminished the genre's cultural influence and artistic sophistication. The emergence of sophisticated film adaptations during the 1980s and 1990s through directors like Stuart Gordon and Brian Yuzna demonstrated how cosmic horror could achieve cinematic effectiveness through emphasis on body horror and psychological breakdown, rather than direct visualization of cosmic entities, establishing techniques that would influence subsequent adaptations across multiple media platforms. Gordon's Reanimator, 1985, and From Beyond, 1986, while adapting relatively minor Lovecraft stories, revealed how cosmic horror themes could support visceral horror effects, while maintaining essential philosophical frameworks of scientific investigation leading to catastrophic revelation, creating successful commercial entertainment that preserved cosmic horror's distinctive emphasis on the dangerous nature of forbidden knowledge and the inadequacy of human consciousness for comprehending cosmic realities. These adaptations demonstrated that effective cosmic horror cinema required understanding of the genre's literary techniques rather than simple translation of plot elements, as the most successful films emphasized atmospheric development, psychological deterioration, and implications of vast cosmic contexts rather than explicit depiction of impossible phenomena. The technique of combining practical effects with psychological horror enabled filmmakers to suggest cosmic alienness through biological transformation and environmental corruption, while preserving essential mystery about ultimate cosmic forces and their relationship to terrestrial existence. Yuzna's Society, 1989, while not directly based on Lovecraft's work, demonstrated how cosmic horror principles could support contemporary social criticism through body horror and paranoid revelation, establishing patterns of adaptation that extended cosmic horror themes beyond pure genre entertainment toward cultural commentary and philosophical exploration. These sophisticated adaptations revealed that cosmic horror's cinematic potential lay not in literal translation of literary elements, but in creative application of the genre's essential techniques and philosophical frameworks to visual storytelling methods that could achieve comparable atmospheric and intellectual effects through different artistic means. Television adaptations have provided cosmic horror with opportunities for extended narrative development that film's temporal limitations often prevent. enabling creators to explore themes of gradual revelation and psychological deterioration across multiple episodes while building atmospheric intensity through sustained character development and environmental corruption. The most successful television approaches, exemplified by series like True Detective, 2014, and Lovecraft Country, 2020, have demonstrated how cosmic horror elements can enhance contemporary dramatic narratives while addressing social and cultural issues that extend the genre's relevance beyond pure horror entertainment, creating hybrid forms that maintain essential cosmic horror characteristics while engaging with current political and cultural concerns. True Detective's first season particularly exemplified effective television cosmic horror through its emphasis on vast temporal conspiracies, environmental corruption, and philosophical investigation that gradually revealed implications of cosmic meaninglessness and human insignificance, achieving atmospheric effects comparable to literary cosmic horror, while utilizing television's capacity for extended character development and cultural critique. The series demonstrated how cosmic horror themes could support contemporary crime drama while providing frameworks for exploring existential questions about meaning, morality, and human significance within apparently indifferent social and cosmic systems that operate according to principles that exceed individual understanding and control. Lovecraft Country approached adaptation through different strategies, using cosmic horror elements as metaphors for historical and contemporary racism while maintaining genre characteristics of forbidden knowledge, biological corruption, and institutional conspiracy, creating narratives that address social justice concerns through cosmic horror frameworks rather than simple historical drama. These television adaptations revealed cosmic horror's capacity for supporting diverse narrative approaches and cultural commentary, while maintaining essential atmospheric and philosophical characteristics, establishing television as potentially the most suitable visual medium for cosmic horror's complex thematic requirements and extended atmospheric development. The digital streaming era has witnessed unprecedented experimentation with cosmic horror adaptations, as platforms like Netflix, Amazon Prime, and specialized horror services have provided creators with greater creative freedom and audience targeting capabilities that enable more sophisticated approaches to difficult-to-adapt literary material. Contemporary adaptations like Color Out of Space, 2019, The Lighthouse, 2019, and Annihilation, 2018, have demonstrated how modern filmmaking technology and distribution methods can support cosmic horror projects that might have proved commercially unviable under traditional studio systems, enabling directors to pursue atmospheric and philosophical approaches that prioritize artistic integrity over mass market appeal. These adaptations have benefited from advances in digital effects, technology that enable visualization of impossible phenomena, while maintaining essential mystery through selective revelation and atmospheric suggestion, creating visual experiences that complement rather than compete with literary cosmic horror, while offering new possibilities for atmospheric development and psychological exploration. The streaming platform model has also enabled creation of anthology series like Lovecraft Country, and various independent web series that explore cosmic horror themes through diverse cultural perspectives and contemporary concerns, demonstrating the genre's adaptability to current social and political contexts while maintaining essential characteristics of cosmic dread and existential uncertainty. International adaptations, particularly from Japanese and European filmmakers, have revealed how cosmic horror themes translate across cultural boundaries, while offering fresh perspectives on essential questions about human significance and cosmic indifference, creating global dialogue about existential concerns that transcend specific cultural contexts while maintaining local cultural authenticity and artistic innovation. The digital era has thus transformed cosmic horror adaptation from occasional commercial experiment into ongoing cultural phenomenon that continues to evolve through technological innovation and cultural diversity, while maintaining essential atmospheric and philosophical characteristics that define the genre's distinctive approach to horror and existential exploration. Video game adaptations have emerged as perhaps the most naturally compatible medium for cosmic horror themes, as interactive entertainment enables direct player engagement with forbidden knowledge and psychological breakdown, while providing immediate consequences for curiosity and investigation that parallel cosmic horror's literary techniques of reader involvement and existential anxiety. Games like Call of Cthulhu, Dark Corners of the Earth, 2005, Amnesia, The Dark Descent, 2010, and The Sinking City, 2019, have demonstrated how interactive media can create immersive experiences of cosmic horror investigation while maintaining essential characteristics of gradual revelation, psychological deterioration, and player agency balanced against cosmic helplessness. The medium's capacity for environmental storytelling, revealing narrative information through exploration of atmospheric spaces rather than explicit exposition, proves particularly suitable for cosmic horror's emphasis on suggestion and implication, enabling players to reconstruct impossible histories through archaeological investigation and document analysis that mirrors literary cosmic horror's scholarly methodology. Interactive fiction and text-based adventure games have maintained even closer connections to cosmic horror's literary origins, while demonstrating how digital technology can enhance rather than replace traditional narrative techniques, creating hybrid experiences that combine reading, investigation, and decision-making in ways that intensify rather than diminish cosmic horror's essential atmospheric and philosophical effects. Virtual reality technology promises even greater possibilities for cosmic horror adaptation, as immersive environments can create unprecedented opportunities for experiencing impossible geometries and cosmic alienness, while maintaining player agency and psychological involvement that traditional media cannot achieve. Though early VR cosmic horror projects suggest both remarkable potential and significant technical challenges in creating sustainable horror experiences that avoid simple shock effects in favor of sustained existential anxiety. The gaming medium thus represents cosmic horror's most successful adaptation to contemporary digital culture, while offering possibilities for future development that may surpass traditional literary approaches in creating immediate psychological engagement with cosmic themes and existential concerns. The broader cultural impact of these diverse adaptations reveals how cosmic horror has evolved from specialized literary genre into multimedia cultural phenomenon that continues to influence contemporary entertainment while addressing persistent human concerns about knowledge, meaning, and cosmic significance through increasingly sophisticated artistic and technological approaches. The success of adaptations across multiple media platforms demonstrates cosmic horror's remarkable flexibility and cultural relevance, while suggesting that the genre's essential themes resonate with contemporary audiences facing their own encounters with technological complexity, environmental uncertainty, and social systems that appear to operate according to principles beyond individual understanding or control. The evolution from early film adaptations through contemporary streaming series and interactive media reveals ongoing cultural dialogue about existential questions that cosmic horror has consistently explored, suggesting that Lovecraft's original literary innovations have achieved cultural status comparable to classical mythology, while maintaining contemporary relevance through continuous adaptation and reinterpretation across diverse artistic and technological contexts. The implications extend beyond entertainment industry analysis to fundamental questions about how human communities create and maintain meaning systems within cultural environments that appear increasingly vast and incomprehensible, raising possibilities that cosmic horror's cultural persistence reflects not merely aesthetic preference, but genuine psychological and social needs that contemporary culture struggles to address through traditional intellectual and spiritual resources, thus establishing cosmic horror adaptations as both artistic achievements and cultural phenomena that continue to evolve through technological innovation and creative interpretation, while maintaining essential philosophical commitments to exploring humanity's relationship with forces that exceed understanding and control within apparently indifferent cosmic contexts that challenge conventional assumptions about meaning, purpose, and human significance in ways that remain relevant across diverse cultural and technological environments. The emergence of tabletop role-playing games as a medium for cosmic horror exploration has created one of the most successful and influential adaptations of Lovecraftian themes, transforming passive literary consumption into active collaborative storytelling that enables players to experience cosmic horror's essential dynamics of investigation, revelation, and psychological breakdown through direct participation rather than vicarious observation. The Call of Cthulhu role-playing game, first published by Chaosium in 1981, established the foundational framework for interactive cosmic horror by creating systematic rules for managing sanity loss, forbidden knowledge acquisition, and encounters with cosmic entities that preserved essential genre characteristics while enabling sustained group narratives across multiple gaming sessions. The game's innovative sanity mechanics, which cause player characters to lose mental stability as they encounter cosmic realities, directly translate cosmic horror's literary emphasis on the psychological costs of forbidden knowledge into interactive mechanics that create immediate consequences for player curiosity and investigation, generating genuine tension between the desire to uncover mysteries and the need to preserve character functionality. The investigative framework encourages players to adopt the scholarly methodologies characteristic of cosmic horror protagonists, while experiencing firsthand the gradual accumulation of evidence that leads toward impossible conclusions, creating collaborative narratives that mirror literary cosmic horror's essential structure of academic investigation, leading to catastrophic revelation. The game's emphasis on player agency balanced against cosmic helplessness enables groups to explore themes of human insignificance and existential uncertainty through shared storytelling experiences that generate emotional investment comparable to literary engagement, while providing social contexts for processing existential anxieties that individual reading cannot offer. Consider carefully how this transformation from individual literary experience to collaborative social activity has created new possibilities for engaging with cosmic horror themes, while establishing cultural communities devoted to exploring existential questions through interactive entertainment that combines artistic expression with philosophical investigation. Video game adaptations have demonstrated cosmic horror's remarkable compatibility with digital interactive media, as computer games can create immersive environments for experiencing impossible geometries, psychological breakdown, and gradual revelation while maintaining player agency and atmospheric development across extended gameplay experiences. Early text-based adventure games like The Lurking Horror, 1987, maintain close connections to cosmic horror's literary origins, while demonstrating how interactive fiction could enhance rather than diminish traditional narrative techniques through player involvement in investigative processes and decision-making that directly influenced story outcomes. The evolution toward graphic adventure games and survival horror titles like Alone in the Dark, 1992, and Eternal Darkness: Sanity's Requiem, 2002, revealed how visual and audio technology could support cosmic horror atmosphere while introducing innovative mechanics for representing psychological deterioration and reality breakdown that translated literary techniques into interactive experiences. Contemporary indie games like Amnesia: The Dark Descent, 2010, and Call of Cthulhu: Dark Corners of the Earth, or 2005, have achieved critical and commercial success through sophisticated approaches to environmental storytelling, psychological horror, and player vulnerability that preserve essential cosmic horror characteristics, while exploiting gaming's unique capacity for creating sustained tension through player agency and resource management. The medium's ability to control pacing, information distribution, and environmental revelation enables game designers to create experiences that parallel literary cosmic horror's techniques of gradual atmospheric development and climactic revelation, while providing immediate sensory engagement that traditional media cannot achieve. Virtual reality technology promises even greater possibilities for cosmic horror gaming, as immersive environments can create unprecedented opportunities for experiencing non-Euclidean architecture and cosmic alienness while maintaining the essential mystery and psychological impact that define effective cosmic horror, though early VR projects suggest both remarkable potential and significant challenges in creating sustainable horror experiences that avoid simple shock effects in favor of sustained existential anxiety. The influence of cosmic horror themes within heavy metal and experimental music has created distinctive subgenres that translate literary atmosphere and philosophical concepts into sonic experiences, demonstrating how musical composition and performance can convey cosmic dread and existential uncertainty through purely auditory means, rather than narrative exposition. Death metal bands like Morbid Angel and Nile have incorporated explicit Lovecraftian imagery and themes into their lyrics and album concepts while developing musical techniques, dissonant harmonies, unconventional time signatures, extreme dynamic contrasts that create auditory analogs to cosmic horror's literary effects of unease and atmospheric tension. The emergence of cosmic black metal as a distinct subgenre, exemplified by bands like Bluthaus Nord and Dark Space, has pushed these techniques toward even more abstract territory. Using extended compositions, ambient interludes, and heavily processed instrumentation to create soundscapes that evoke vast temporal scales and cosmic indifference without relying on conventional song structures or melodic accessibility. Experimental and ambient musicians like Herbest 9, Shibalba, and various dark ambient artists have developed purely instrumental approaches to cosmic horror themes, creating lengthy compositions that emphasize atmosphere and psychological effect over traditional musical development, enabling listeners to experience cosmic dread through sonic immersion rather than lyrical content or visual imagery. The phenomenon of ritual ambient and occult industrial music has created subcultural communities devoted to exploring cosmic horror themes through musical performance and album-based narratives that function as contemporary equivalents to literary cosmic horror, while providing social contexts for shared aesthetic and philosophical exploration. These musical developments demonstrate how cosmic horror's essential characteristics, atmospheric development, psychological tension, vast temporal scales, existential uncertainty, can be translated into purely sonic experiences that achieve effects comparable to literary techniques, while creating new possibilities for cultural engagement and subcultural identity formation around shared aesthetic and philosophical commitments. Online communities and digital subcultures have transformed cosmic horror from specialized literary interest into diverse cultural phenomenon that supports multiple forms of creative expression, social interaction, and philosophical exploration through internet platforms that enable global participation in collaborative world-building and cultural creation. The SCP Foundation represents perhaps the most sophisticated example of collaborative cosmic horror creation, establishing wiki-based framework for community-generated content that maintains systematic quality control while enabling thousands of contributors to develop interconnected narratives that explore cosmic horror themes through scientific documentation and institutional bureaucracy rather than traditional literary techniques. This collaborative approach has generated vast databases of fictional entities, locations, and events that rival traditional literary mythologies in scope and complexity, while demonstrating how digital platforms can support sustained creative collaboration across diverse cultural and geographical contexts without requiring centralized editorial control or commercial publishing infrastructure. Reddit communities, Discord servers, and specialized forums have created social spaces for cosmic horror enthusiasts to share creative work, discuss philosophical implications, and develop interpretive frameworks that extend far beyond simple fan appreciation towards serious cultural and intellectual engagement with existential themes that cosmic horror consistently explores. The phenomenon of creepypasta and collaborative online fiction has democratized cosmic horror creation while maintaining essential atmospheric and thematic characteristics, enabling amateur writers to contribute to ongoing cultural development while learning from established techniques and receiving community feedback that supports artistic development and cultural participation. Social media platforms have further accelerated cosmic horror's cultural dissemination through visual art, short fiction, and multimedia projects that introduce Lovecraftian themes to audiences who might never encounter traditional literary sources, creating cultural bridges between specialized literary communities and broader popular culture, while maintaining essential philosophical and atmospheric commitments that define cosmic horror's distinctive approach to existential exploration. The aesthetic and philosophical influence of cosmic horror within broader subcultural movements reveals how Lovecraftian themes have achieved cultural penetration that extends far beyond horror entertainment toward fundamental questions about human existence, meaning, and cosmic significance that resonate with contemporary anxieties about technological complexity, environmental uncertainty, and social systems that appear to operate according to principles beyond individual understanding or control. Gothic and industrial subcultures have incorporated cosmic horror imagery and themes into fashion, visual art, and social identity while maintaining essential commitments to exploring darkness, alienation, and existential uncertainty that parallel cosmic horror's philosophical frameworks without requiring direct literary engagement or genre identification. Academic and intellectual communities have developed increasingly sophisticated approaches to cosmic horror as legitimate subject for philosophical, cultural, and literary analysis, creating scholarly discourse that treats Lovecraftian themes as serious contributions to contemporary discussions about consciousness, reality, and human significance rather than mere entertainment or cult phenomenon. The emergence of pessimistic philosophy and speculative realism as academic movements has created intellectual frameworks that parallel cosmic horror's essential insights about human limitations and cosmic indifference while providing scholarly legitimacy for exploring existential themes that cosmic horror has consistently addressed through literary and cultural means. Environmental and climate activism has discovered unexpected connections to cosmic horror themes, particularly the recognition that human civilization faces forces, climate change, ecosystem collapse, technological development, that operate according to scales and principles that exceed individual understanding and control, while threatening fundamental assumptions about human significance and survival within planetary systems that remain largely indifferent to human needs and aspirations. The cultural persistence and continued evolution of cosmic horror across diverse media platforms and subcultural contexts suggests that Lovecraft's original literary innovations have achieved mythological status comparable to traditional religious and cultural systems, while maintaining contemporary relevance through continuous adaptation and reinterpretation that addresses persistent human concerns about knowledge, meaning, and cosmic significance within cultural environments that appear increasingly vast and incomprehensible. The transformation from individual authorial vision through collaborative expansion, multimedia adaptation, and subcultural appropriation reveals ongoing cultural dialogue about existential questions that transcend specific entertainment categories or artistic movements, suggesting that cosmic horror serves genuine social and psychological functions that extend beyond aesthetic preference toward fundamental human needs for frameworks that acknowledge rather than minimize existential uncertainty and cosmic insignificance. The implications extend beyond cultural analysis toward recognition that fictional mythologies may provide essential resources for contemporary communities struggling with technological complexity, environmental crisis, and social systems that challenge traditional frameworks for understanding human agency and significance within cosmic contexts that appear to operate according to principles that exceed human comprehension and control, thus establishing cosmic horror's subcultural influence as both cultural phenomenon and potential resource for addressing persistent human concerns about existence, meaning, and cosmic significance in ways that demonstrate remarkable adaptability and enduring relevance across diverse cultural contexts and technological environments that continue to challenge conventional assumptions about human understanding and cosmic purpose in an apparently indifferent universe that exceeds traditional frameworks for cultural meaning and individual significance. The psychological persistence of cosmic horror themes across nearly a century of cultural change reveals how Lovecraft's literary innovations have tapped into fundamental aspects of human consciousness and existential anxiety that transcend specific historical circumstances, technological developments, or cultural transformations, suggesting that cosmic dread addresses persistent features of the human condition rather than merely reflecting early 20th century scientific and philosophical concerns. Contemporary psychological research into existential anxiety, death awareness, and meaning-making processes has identified cognitive patterns that closely parallel cosmic horror's essential themes, particularly the recognition that human consciousness appears uniquely capable among terrestrial life forms of contemplating its own insignificance within vast temporal and spatial scales that dwarf individual existence and cultural achievement. Terror management theory, developed by psychologists building on Ernest Becker's work, demonstrates how awareness of mortality and cosmic insignificance generates fundamental psychological anxiety that human cultures typically manage through meaning systems, heroic narratives, and symbolic immortality projects that provide comfort against existential uncertainty. Yet, cosmic horror systematically undermines these protective frameworks by suggesting that such consolations may be fundamentally illusory when confronted with cosmic realities that exceed human understanding and control. The genre's emphasis on the dangerous nature of knowledge resonates with contemporary cognitive science research, revealing how human consciousness evolved to facilitate survival within limited terrestrial environments rather than to perceive cosmic truths that might prove psychologically harmful to organisms adapted for local rather than universal awareness. Modern neuroscience has identified specific brain structures and cognitive processes associated with existential anxiety, pattern recognition, and meaning-making that appear to respond predictably to cosmic horror's distinctive techniques of suggestion, implication, and gradual revelation, creating neurological explanations for the genre's continued psychological effectiveness across diverse cultural and technological contexts. Consider carefully how these scientific insights into human psychology validate, rather than diminish cosmic horror's essential insights about consciousness, reality, and existential vulnerability, while providing empirical frameworks for understanding why fictional explorations of cosmic insignificance continue to generate authentic psychological responses that persist across changing cultural and historical circumstances. The philosophical relevance of cosmic horror has achieved unprecedented academic recognition through its alignment with contemporary movements in speculative realism, object-oriented ontology, and pessimistic philosophy that challenge anthropocentric assumptions about reality, knowledge, and human significance within broader cosmic contexts that operate according to principles independent of human consciousness and cultural construction. Philosophers like Graham Harman, Quentin Meillassoux, and Thomas Ligotti have explicitly engaged with Lovecraftian themes as legitimate contributions to contemporary metaphysical and epistemological discussions, recognizing cosmic horror as anticipating philosophical developments that would not achieve academic recognition until decades after Lovecraft's death. Speculative realist approaches to reality as existing independently of human perception and cultural interpretation parallel cosmic horror's fundamental commitment to cosmic indifference and human epistemological limitation, while object-oriented ontology's emphasis on non-human agency and alien object relations provides philosophical frameworks for understanding cosmic entities as genuine ontological rather than merely fictional phenomena. The emergence of weird realism as philosophical position demonstrates how cosmic horror's literary techniques, particularly its emphasis on the limits of human understanding and the reality of incomprehensible cosmic forces, have achieved recognition as serious contributions to contemporary metaphysical speculation, rather than mere aesthetic experimentation or entertainment creation. Environmental philosophy and climate change discourse have discovered unexpected connections to cosmic horror themes, particularly the recognition that human civilization confronts planetary systems and geological processes that operate according to temporal scales and causal principles that exceed human cultural and political frameworks, while threatening fundamental assumptions about human agency and environmental control. The philosophical persistence of cosmic horror thus reflects not merely aesthetic preference or cultural fashion, but genuine intellectual recognition that Lovecraft's literary innovations addressed enduring questions about reality, knowledge, and human significance that remain relevant to contemporary philosophical investigation and cultural development, establishing cosmic horror as both artistic achievement and philosophical resource that continues to influence academic discourse and intellectual development across diverse disciplinary and cultural contexts. The therapeutic and psychological applications of cosmic horror themes reveal how confrontation with existential anxiety and cosmic insignificance can paradoxically provide psychological benefits through reducing individual narcissism, encouraging intellectual humility, and creating frameworks for accepting uncertainty and limitation as fundamental features of human existence rather than temporary problems requiring solution. Clinical psychologists and existential therapists have identified how engagement with cosmic horror can facilitate what they term cosmic perspective taking, enabling individuals to contextualize personal problems and cultural anxieties within broader temporal and spatial frameworks that reduce immediate psychological pressure, while encouraging more realistic assessments of human limitations and possibilities. The genre's emphasis on scholarly investigation and methodical documentation provides cognitive models for approaching uncertainty and complexity through systematic inquiry rather than wishful thinking or denial, creating intellectual frameworks that support psychological resilience when confronted with information or circumstances that exceed normal understanding and control. Research into horror media consumption has revealed that individuals who regularly engage with cosmic horror demonstrate increased tolerance for ambiguity, reduced need for cognitive closure, and enhanced capacity for maintaining psychological stability when confronted with uncertain or threatening information, suggesting that fictional exploration of existential themes may provide genuine psychological benefits through controlled exposure to anxiety-provoking concepts within safe cultural contexts. The phenomenon of horror therapy and bibliotherapy using cosmic horror materials has demonstrated clinical effectiveness in treating various forms of anxiety disorder, existential depression, and meaning-making difficulties by providing cultural frameworks for accepting, rather than fighting, fundamental aspects of human existence that cannot be changed or controlled through individual effort or cultural intervention. Contemporary mindfulness and meditation practices have discovered unexpected connections to cosmic horror's essential insights about ego dissolution, temporal transcendence, and the illusory nature of individual significance, creating therapeutic approaches that combine ancient contemplative traditions with modern literary techniques for exploring consciousness, reality, and existential acceptance within cosmic contexts that exceed personal understanding and cultural control. The educational and intellectual applications of cosmic horror demonstrate how the genre's distinctive approaches to knowledge, investigation, and epistemological humility can support critical thinking, scientific literacy, and philosophical sophistication in ways that conventional educational materials often fail to achieve through direct instruction or traditional academic presentation. University courses in literature, philosophy, and cultural studies have increasingly incorporated cosmic horror materials as legitimate subjects for academic investigation, while recognizing their effectiveness in engaging student interest in complex philosophical and cultural questions that might otherwise remain abstract or disconnected from immediate psychological relevance. The genre's emphasis on pseudo-scholarly documentation and systematic investigation provides pedagogical models for teaching research methodology, critical evaluation of sources, and the relationship between evidence and conclusion that support academic skill development while maintaining student engagement through atmospheric and psychological elements that traditional textbooks typically lack. Science education has discovered cosmic horror's effectiveness in teaching astronomical scales, geological time, evolutionary biology, and other scientific concepts that challenge intuitive human understanding, while requiring acceptance of counterintuitive realities that exceed normal cultural and psychological frameworks for comprehending natural phenomena. The genre's consistent emphasis on the limitations of human knowledge and the dangerous nature of certain forms of understanding provides frameworks for teaching scientific humility, epistemological caution, and the relationship between knowledge and responsibility that support both intellectual development and ethical awareness within scientific and technological contexts. Philosophy educators have recognized cosmic horror's effectiveness in introducing students to existential themes, metaphysical questions, and epistemological problems while maintaining psychological engagement and cultural relevance that abstract philosophical presentation often fails to achieve, creating pedagogical approaches that combine rigorous intellectual investigation with immediate psychological and cultural significance that supports sustained academic interest and personal intellectual development. The cross-cultural and international persistence of cosmic horror themes reveals how Lovecraft's originally American and culturally specific literary innovations have achieved global relevance through translation, adaptation, and cultural reinterpretation that maintains essential philosophical and atmospheric characteristics while addressing local cultural concerns and contemporary global anxieties about technological development, environmental crisis, and social complexity. Japanese horror manga and anime have developed distinctive approaches to cosmic horror that combine traditional Japanese aesthetic and philosophical elements with Lovecraftian themes, creating hybrid cultural forms that address contemporary Japanese concerns about technological alienation, social isolation, and environmental catastrophe while maintaining essential cosmic horror characteristics of existential uncertainty and human insignificance. European art house, cinema, and experimental literature have incorporated cosmic horror elements into avant-garde artistic projects that explore contemporary political and cultural themes through frameworks derived from cosmic horror's distinctive techniques and philosophical commitments, demonstrating the genre's capacity for supporting diverse cultural and artistic expressions while maintaining essential characteristics that transcend specific national or cultural contexts. Academic conferences, literary festivals, and cultural institutions worldwide have recognized cosmic horror as legitimate subject for international intellectual and cultural exchange, creating global communities devoted to exploring existential themes through frameworks that originated in American pulp fiction, yet have achieved philosophical and cultural significance that extends far beyond their original cultural and historical contexts. The phenomenon suggests that cosmic horror addresses fundamental aspects of human consciousness and cultural development that remain relevant across diverse cultural, technological, and historical circumstances, establishing it as both literary achievement and cultural resource that continues to evolve through international dialogue and cross-cultural interpretation, while maintaining essential insights about human existence, knowledge, and cosmic significance that resonate with contemporary global concerns about meaning, purpose, and survival within planetary and cosmic systems that appear to operate according to principles that exceed human understanding and control. The future implications of cosmic horror's psychological and philosophical endurance suggest that Lovecraft's literary innovations may prove even more culturally relevant as human civilization confronts technological developments, environmental changes, and cosmic discoveries that increasingly validate the genre's essential insights about human limitations, cosmic indifference, and the potentially dangerous nature of certain forms of knowledge and technological capability. Contemporary developments in artificial intelligence, quantum physics, climate science, and space exploration continue to reveal realities that challenge anthropocentric assumptions, while suggesting that human consciousness and cultural systems may prove inadequate for comprehending or controlling forces that operate according to principles exceeding traditional frameworks for understanding agency, causation, and significance within cosmic contexts that remain largely alien to human experience and cultural preparation. The possibility that cosmic horror represents not merely artistic creation, but prophetic cultural preparation for ongoing encounters with technological complexity, environmental uncertainty, and cosmic realities that exceed human understanding suggests that the genre's psychological and philosophical insights may prove essential resources for future cultural development and individual psychological adaptation to circumstances that validate rather than refute cosmic horror's fundamental commitments to exploring human limitations, cosmic indifference, and existential uncertainty within apparently meaningless universal contexts that challenge conventional assumptions about consciousness, purpose, and human significance in ways that may require cultural frameworks capable of acknowledging, rather than denying, fundamental aspects of cosmic reality that remain hostile or indifferent to human needs, aspirations, and survival within planetary and cosmic systems that operate according to principles that exceed human comprehension and control, thus establishing cosmic horror's enduring relevance as both cultural achievement and ongoing resource for addressing persistent and emerging human concerns about existence, knowledge, and meaning within cosmic contexts that continue to challenge traditional frameworks for understanding human agency and significance.